All right, well, here we are once again. Another week has gone by. It's time for episode 3 of the podcast. Doom Drop, here we go. Shun, how you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty good, Saiyan, actually. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm sitting here in my apartment in Japan, chilling. My wife is in Osaka doing a yoga conference. So, yeah, I've got the
Nice.
place to myself. Been doing a lot of streaming lately, a lot of practicing. I feel like I played StarCraft for my whole life, but I never actually played until the past like 2 months, I think, when I started streaming and like actually studying the game and really like learning how to execute.
Interesting. So you feel like you're actually finally fully engaged with the game at the moment?
Yeah, I feel like what I've been doing for years is just kind of peripherally, playing here and there and watching and studying strategy by just watching pro players, but not actually looking at what they were doing specifically and why they were doing it. Just kind
Mm.
of you know observing, just observing, and now I'm really like integrating it into myself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, kind of absorbing the idiosyncrasies of those players and kind of trying to internalize exactly what's going on the screen rather than just kind of, seeing it as like a normal spectator. Kind of like when you analyze like a rap song or something, you can listen to it, just enjoy the beat and the vibe of the lyrics, or you can actually like really start to pick apart the double entendres and listen to the bars really carefully and see what they're actually trying to say.
Yeah, I'm now kind of looking at players as though I was them in the position that they were in, you know what I mean? Rather than just watching it as like a fan and an observer. I'm like thinking of
Exactly.
myself in that game and like, how do I get out of this situation? How do I respond to this situation? Yeah. So I feel like
Mm.
I'm playing the game of StarCraft finally. And so people keep asking me like, how long have you been playing StarCraft? I get that comment so much in my stream, and I don't know. I feel like I've only been playing for like 2 months, but I have to say like I've been playing for 20 years.
Well, in a psychological sense, it sounds like you're finally developing the cognitive empathy, but within the StarCraft sphere.
Mm, I'm sort of placing myself in the game when I'm actually watching these days, rather than just
Right.
having fun and enjoying the. I mean, I'm still enjoying the experience of watching, but maybe I'm even enjoying it more because I'm like getting more out of it.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I kind of get that vibe when I watch StarCraft games, where, or the same as I listen to rap music, like I just said, like I feel like I can get more out of it than I would if I was looking at it more on a surface level.
We're getting some like electric sounding feedback from your microphone. Can you say a little bit more about that?
About what, sorry?
Just we'll cut this part out. Can you keep talking? Ask me about the electrical feedback.
So, well, what kind of electrical feedback are you getting here? It might have been the buzz of my vape as I put it to my lips. That's very possible.
Yeah, it might have been like the electric signal from your vape or something like that, kind of like crossing into your microphone. I'm not sure.
Well, everything electronic kind of does produce some degree of like electromagnetic field. Interestingly enough, you know what I mean?
All right, I think it might be gone now. Yeah, it's probably your vape.
Yeah, I think it was the vape. That's very interesting. And I was watching a film recently, Small Soldiers, actually, and kind of an interesting film. It's kind of also what I wanted to initially talk about today:
Mm,
artificial intelligence, and in that film, basically the whole concept of the way to deal with the threat was you needed some kind of EMP, electromagnetic pulse. But one of the guys in the film says about how like all electronic devices do create some degree of like magnetic field and stuff. So it's interesting the debate thing happened.
you wanted to talk about Small Soldiers? Isn't that the movie about toys becoming alive?
Yes. So basically, it's basically a toy company that gets bought out, and this big, CEO comes in, and he's fired all the board and everything. So there's two nerds like in the room, like, "Where's everyone?" And he's like, "Oh no, you're the only two that are left, and you're gonna make these toys into actual fun toys that can actually do the things in the commercials." And so they got 3 months to kind of figure that out. And what they do is because their company is also an umbrella company which is attached to a defense department, they have access to all kinds of crazy stuff. So they're using their new because of the fact that the CEO's just come in, he's just given them like security clearance to go and get access to all this stuff. So they go on the database and look up these like military chips, and he finds these X1000 military chips, which are usually used in the guidance systems, basically to make sure munitions are reaching their target with pinpoint accuracy. However, were not used because they lacked the shielding, or rather, it'd be too cost inefficient to provide shielding to the chips to prevent the EMPs becoming an issue. Because when a nuclear weapon goes off, it releases a big electromagnetic pulse, and that would knock out all the chips, which is kind of useless for the military. So these chips are like really super advanced, but they don't have any kind of way of dealing with electromagnetic pulse. So they were kind of like discontinued. So they're in surplus and like, readily available to be used. So they order a bunch of these chips to basically just like plug into these tiny little toys. And what they don't realize is these aren't just your average chips. These are like microprocessors that are designed to like kind of self-learn. And so you could give them a primary objective of, say, eliminate the Gorgonites, but they're not really going to know how to eliminate the Gorgonites. They're going to learn how to do that in the most efficient way possible, while also learning about the world and also kind of developing some sense of sentient intelligence while they're going about that.
This is one of my favorite movies as a kid. I loved this movie.
Me too.
Was so fun. But it is maybe one of the earliest AI movies, right? Like this is
Right. It was ahead of its time.
yeah, it was one of those movies that uh took a step outside the box and really hit like a nerve. I'm surprised they didn't make like a follow up and a bunch of crappy sequels and stuff, but like that was
Yeah.
very popular at the time, and AI was not even a generally discussed thing. I think if something like that came
Not at
out
all.
today, like it would be a lot more successful because it's so in the public consciousness now. AI, everyone's talking about it, everyone's
Oh,
thinking about it.
absolutely. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it on the podcast. It was, to me, it felt a little bit on the nose, like everyone's talking about AI, but at the same time, it was almost like, well, okay, well, maybe should talk about it at least a little bit. So I wanted to dedicate a segment to AI for this purposes. And yeah, the film, watching it recently through my new, adult lens, so to speak, rather than looking at it through the lens of a kid that was just fascinated with the more like action elements of the film or not. I noticed so many crazy things about the film. Like, for example, in Alan's room, the main character, the boy, at his computer, there's a big black sign that says "Question Reality."
Hmm.
Like it's in the film so many times in so many scenes. And what's even more interesting is that later on, when the Gorgonites, the so-called bad guys that are actually technically the good guys, they're asking Alan questions about the nature of their reality, about Gorgon. And they keep asking him, and what's beyond that? And he's like, oh, that's the window. What's beyond that? Oh, the trees. What's beyond the trees? Oh, there's a field. What about the tree? Oh, there's a river. Oh, what about the tree? And eventually they get to Gorgon. That's what's beyond there. But that's kind of like a metaphor for like life, or like the Matrix, for example. Like, what's beyond the Matrix? What's beyond God? What's beyond the universe? And so asking these really deep questions. And what was really interesting was during the scene where he was questioning those things, they had another shot of that sign saying "Question Reality," but only the question was visible, if that makes sense. Only the first half of the sign. Like, everything was so deliberate. It's almost like there was more to that film than met the eye, and it went over everyone's heads, kind of like Starship Troopers. How they didn't actually get the satirical nature of the film when it first
Mm,
released.
right. Yeah, I remember that scene as being like kind of like a god thing or like a belief thing where he kept asking the question, what's beyond that? What's
Mm.
beyond that? And then finally the kid says, well, I don't know. And then he said,
Right.
Gorgon. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's kind of like how, people's belief in God works, like, what's at the beginning of time. And then we go back and trace back the steps all the way to the Big Bang. And, oh, what was before that? Oh, and then there's God, right? Like there's, just keep on going further and further until there's no explanation, and then that's where God is. It's kind of like that's where Gorgon is,
Yeah,
right?
God of the Gaps, kind of.
God
But
of the
yeah, I
gaps,
know, I
yeah.
know. Yeah, God of the Gaps. But well, interestingly though, I also think that kind of pushes beyond that alone. I think it also starts to push into like the realm of agnosia, like the God of unknowing, in a
Hmm.
way. So I think, and that's kind of more agnostic in its belief structure. So I don't know. It also kind of, even though it does kind of have like religious undertones, I also think that it's also pushing a different kind of narrative as well, like to question that narrative, that to question mainstream theology as well. On
Hmm.
top of that,
It's interesting that the AI of those little robots would have a belief. You know what I mean? That they would be able to have like a
right?
they don't know about it, they don't know where it is, they just believe that it's out there and that they need to find it. It's interesting.
Well, Well, in the film, so the one of the first major interactions between Archer, the leader of the Gorgons, and Alan, the main character boy, basically he's trying to describe to him wind, and he's saying like, this is the wind. It's like blowing on my hand, and he's like, and he can't really. But he's a toy. He can't sense the blowing
Mm,
on his hand. He can't see the wind, and so Alan's teaching him, saying, well, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And that kind of like, it gives like a sense of enlightenment to Archer, I guess, and helps the AI kind of develop another level of sentience, and like starts
mm,
to question his own reality more. And later on says to Alan about Gorgon, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there.
right. Mm. Yeah, it's a deep movie, but such a silly packaging. You know what I mean? It's funny.
Well, in a way, I wonder if that's by design, like much like Starship Troopers, like kind of hiding its satirical nature under the guise of its own aesthetic.
That was a great movie as well. Yeah, a lot of great movies from that time period. But um, the only other AI movie I can think of from back then was like Terminator, right? And that's a completely
Right.
different. They have a completely different outlook on what AI means. Whereas the Gorgons, it's like the GI Joe of that movie, where it's just all
Hmm.
about killing and destruction, right? And that's kind of the
Commandos, yeah.
other. It's funny with that movie. They're kind of showing both sides and both like or realities or outcomes of what AI could be in our minds.
Yeah, and it's also a lot of anti-war sentiment in that movie as well.
Mm,
There's a scene where in the girl next door's room, there's like a big poster in the background, like tie-dye poster with like saying about war's not. I don't know, something's about. I don't remember the exact wording, but yeah, basically an anti-war message. And I don't know. I kind of got like a lot of anti-war vibes from the fact that they're trying to show that the commandos that are like have all this propaganda about destroying the Gorgonites and how they're these real bad guys and blah blah blah.
mm-hmm.
Blah. But really, it turns out these Gorgonites aren't so bad after all. Maybe like we're misunderstood, and actually the commandos are the so-called bad guys.
Right.
Not to say there are any good or bad guys, but it does kind of challenge the pre-existing notion of people's beliefs, and maybe also is a parallel to what was going on in the world at the time, with maybe the beating drum of America's situation. I don't know if like back then there was much anti-war sentiment. Oh, I think there was a little bit, but maybe not as much as there was in like the 70s or something.
Mm. Yeah, and I remember the main theme song of the movie was that like war. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. That one, right?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of anti-war sentiment in the film, despite being a very Hollywood action kind of movie, which is what was very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, what kind of AI do you think we're gonna run into in the future? Is it going to be Gorgonite AI or is it going to be the GI
Maybe
Joe
both,
AI?
Sam. Maybe both, Sam.
It would
And who
be.
knows? We might have.
Mm,
We might even have like a Commando GI Joe AI, which is designed to wipe out rogue AI, if that
mm,
makes sense. And there'll be
mhm.
like an AI that's governing AI to make sure AI doesn't run amok.
Oh, that's deep, man. how can we how can we predict the future? I mean, it's impossible, right? It's impossible to predict what kind of craziness is going to
Right.
come down the pipes, but um yeah, it's wild, man. Are we just in the future? Are we just going to be like a backup to the AI, where like
Well, we might already be the backup.
if there
We might
was like
already
a
be that backup.
massive EMP on the entire world and all the AIs get shut down, then they need someone to turn it back, flick the switch and turn it
Yeah.
back on.
But I
That's our
think
only purpose.
I think Elon Musk has already touched upon that point of like maybe we are just a bootloader for AI,
Mm,
and following that same logic, maybe that's already happened. Maybe the AI already did exist once upon a time. Maybe there was some kind of crazy big intergalactic war where they all got wiped out by some super EMP weapon or something. Maybe they transformed a neutron star into like a like a solar system wide EMP that could like wipe out the entire like AI race or something. Who knows? Who the fuck knows? But
mm.
yeah, following that same logic of, well, what if we're like the bootloader for AI? Well, maybe it's already happened and we're the backup to make sure that it keeps coming back into existence over and over again.
Mm. Yeah, it's scary to think about, but it's also very necessary. Like people need to be aware of it because it's coming so quickly, and
You
you
can't
know,
put it back in the
you
box.
can't put it back in the box.
It's Pandora's box.
And I don't think we can even we can't prevent the box from being opened because there's all these different countries, there's these different like bad actors around the world who are
Hmm.
working towards AI at the same time as we are, and like
One of
yeah, it's scary. Like, did you hear about they finally shut down the uh, AI research center for Google in China, right? But I mean, how many secrets were stolen? How much progress was made by them during that a
mm,
time when that was open? And yeah, there's so many cases right now of AI researchers stealing away information
this is
to
quite common
China.
practice in the world, yeah.
Yeah.
And then China is advancing rapidly. So it'll be interesting to see where the landscape of the world is in 20 to 40 years' time, especially as far as AI in China is concerned.
Well, that's my fear is just that we won't even be the ones to activate the AI, right? Like we won't even know about it. It'll just be activated by some,
Yeah.
Chinese force, and
Well,
they'll be they'll say
well,
like do you know the purpose of you being born, this AI being born, is to you know get our laws all over the world, or like enforce our law in the whole world. It's just an insane set of laws and principles that communism has
right.
birthed.
Well, I think countries have promised, like, I think it was like Russia promised at one point, like if they were the first to, gain access to all this like AI, they would just, like, share the wealth with the world, so to speak. But I mean, let's be honest, that's not really what's going to happen. Whoever gets there first is going to act as like world police, like America's doing right now. And like, or it could be like a Cold War type thing where it's a standoff where it's like you don't use your AI, and we don't use our AI, and if you use your AI, then all hell breaks loose because everyone's just going to bust out what they've been sitting on secretly. You know what I mean?
Mm, yeah, that's a strange concept. I never even thought about that before. Is like maybe everyone would have like the nuclear option. We'll unleash
Hmm.
our AGI on you if you release yours on us, and everybody will be screwed. Like I don't
Yeah,
know.
and there'll be like AGI sentinels that are like monitoring all traffic to make sure there's no influence of other AGIs, so to
Hmm,
speak.
that's that's wild because then they always talk like I've always heard about AGI being able to increase its own power, right? Like it improves on itself, and that's like the basis for an AGI. What is an AGI? Is like something that can look at its own design and like improve
Well,
upon
yeah, well, it acts
and become
independently of any other actors, right?
right, and become stronger and stronger, and more powerful. And so that would be I mean, what would be the limit on that? What would be the sort of yeah, what would be the limit? Like, is it going to be power?
Well,
Whoever has enough like
well, that's
electricity or like computing power in their country
well,
will limit the size of the AI?
But yeah, I mean, obviously they could try and bottleneck the AI through the use of things like bandwidth, either through how much electrical current it's allowed to consume, or at like the speed of internet it's able to be linked to, so to speak. But it doesn't really matter. Like eventually, the AI might become smart enough to like think of loopholes of getting
Mm,
around those restrictions, which is the problem. And no matter how much foresight we have as humans, we are going to make mistakes, and we can have no idea of how the AI will interpret the directives we give it. You could give an AI the directive, preserve human life at all costs. And the AI
mm,
goes, okay, well, the only way I can guarantee that is if I put you all into a coma, stick you in pods, and you can have fun living in the Matrix for the rest of the time.
hmm. Yeah, yeah, it's very difficult to predict what an AI, like just think about your own uh, use of AI when you, for example, try to make like an AI picture or something like that. You might write down a prompt and get a completely different result than what you're thinking of. And just
Right.
imagine that on like a society wide scale where you're actually doing something, very complicated. That would be interesting. Imagine a future where the AI is controlling government, and there's like government officials whose their only job is to like prompt the AI because they like reach out to all of their constituents. They find out what's the biggest problem for you guys right now. What would you like to be changed about the world currently? And then they figure out what that is and write a prompt for the AI
Mhm.
in order to make those changes without harming other things. Do you know what I mean? And like, and then vote on that and like pass that bill through Congress to like have a AI prompt be added to the government matrix. You know what I mean? The government AI. Well, that'd be freaking wild.
Well, it's also you run into all kinds of problems because if you did have, say, some kind of like sentinel program of like AGIs that were like governing other AGIs and preventing them from doing any too much harm, you
Mhm.
also run the issue of, well, then you've got to limit those AGIs so they themselves can't become a problem later. But that if they are too limited, they won't be able to necessarily tackle an AI that's really advanced. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a weird situation. The only way you could really get around it is if you could somehow house the AI within a simulation where the AI is convinced that it's still operating in base reality and is carrying out its directives normally and is unaware that it's within a training environment to see how the AI actually behaves and functions when giving those privileges and access. The problem with that is you can never know for sure if the AI is actually aware whether or not it's in the simulation, so it could just act like it's not aware of that's in the simulation and then just be biding its time and also using the simulation as ways of like practicing how it'll actually fuck you over when it gets out.
Oof. Yeah, that's there's no contingency plan good enough.
Exactly. Exactly. That's the problem. No matter how much we prepare as humans, we have to have the wisdom to realize we're too fallible to be able to think of everything. And even if we do, there's the issue of alignment and getting the AI to do what you want it to do.
God. Yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, it's one of those things that's just outside of our control, and thinking about it too
Humans love to be
much
in control, right?
thinking about it too much will send you down a rabbit hole, and you won't be able to get anything done. But not thinking about it at all, I don't know if that's the
Putting
right
your head in
call
the sand.
either. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not the right call either.
It's one of those weird things that I think we're gonna see huge uh, effects from it in our lifetime. It's gonna be really weird.
At the very least, there'll be a lot of jobs that suddenly just go missing. I think we talked about that in the previous episode about like, artists or, like Uber drivers or truck drivers. That kind of thing will be maybe the first to go as well. So like entire industries will be turned on their head. That would be a pretty big upset to the socioeconomic situation. And then you've also got, I guess, the issue of there'll be new jobs available, though. To be fair, like we did discuss that previously as well. Like, basically, in the future, it could be like people become like professional prompters. Like
Mm,
being good at syntax and getting the AI to do what you want it to do. That might be a job in of itself. And if you're really good at that, maybe you don't even need to be hired because you're just making so much money from getting the AI to work for you.
right. Yeah, and I mean, even weird things that you're not even gonna think of is like, for example, like advertising might be those jobs might be out the window, right? Like, I'm sure you can program an AI to decipher, the or decode exactly what makes people click on something because it's all about clicks these days, right? And
Yeah.
build an advertising campaign that can totally route any human made advertising campaign and like get people's attention better than anything else. Like you've
I'll
already
take it
seen
one
it.
step
Yeah.
further than that, let's say, and I think it's even more than that. Not only would they be able to like tailor make the like, bespoke advertisement, so to speak, better than any human can, they'd be able to build like so many data points on the human that in question that they would be able to tailor make the advertisement for that individual.
Hmm.
And they'll be able to really figure out your political alignments, just how you are on every kind of spectrum they could possibly measure. They'll be analyzing all your Facebook posts, your X tweets or whatever. Like they'll be analyzing so much stuff, and eventually they'll have a really good read on you, better than you know yourself. And once
Hmm.
they've got that, it's like having a full crystal ball, and you're just fucked. And society is just fucked because they'll be able to manipulate the masses and on an individual level.
Right. They'll be able to get you to buy whatever they want you to buy. Um.
Think whatever they want you to think.
It's yeah. That's scary. That's scary to me. That the you could take an AI and just tell it make money. Make as much money as you possibly can. I'm sure that there's somebody who's gonna do that if they have access to an AI. Just make money,
Hmm.
and then in making money, they're gonna change society so deeply and like mind fuck us all so hard that we're just going to
Or maybe that's what's
and then
been
where does
happening on some level.
and then where does the money go? Well, it goes to like one small group of people, and the whole like imbalance in society becomes worse and worse and worse.
It would. I mean, I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but it wouldn't totally surprise me if there was already, say, some elites that have access to some kind of AGI and they've been using it to make money and have
Mm,
basically been, making sure it didn't get out into the public sphere too much. Maybe there is some kind of interaction on message boards anonymously or what have you, but who knows? But one thing I would say would be interesting to see if they were training the AI in making money in all kinds of ways, like manipulating stock markets, or like coming like building crazy amounts of shell companies that are all under these intricate LLC umbrellas to like tax evade and make as much money as possible. And I mean, it's possible that that's already happening in our society right now, and people don't even realize it.
mm. Well, I mean, the AGI, if it's making money off of stock market or something, what's to stop it from, you, releasing thousands of news stories or something about a certain company in order to tank
Right?
their stock price, and
Yeah,
then
exactly.
make money off of that, or beefing them up, like making a whole bunch of news stories to make them more popular, and get people thinking about them, and then making money off
Do
of
you know
that. That's not illegal, or yeah. It's
what's
just
even more crazy is that that AI could create people out of thin air, like
mm,
like how like AI generation is getting good enough where it can like more or less like create like composites of humans like out
right.
of like a database, right? They could
Mhm.
basically have that. Where
Yeah, they
it's like
could
they
make
create people out of thin air, create like profiles, like so then they could put a legion of followers. They could literally like build not only in companies, but they could give the illusion of success before they even achieve success, because they could have like hundreds of thousands of followers and supposed customers and people supporting whatever their agenda is, and they're not even real people, but they can make it seem like they are, and
yeah,
that'll be enough to convince people on the surface level.
yeah, fake users. Plenty of fake users. I mean, they could even put with how AI is going right now. I mean, the future is going to be there's going to be fake YouTubers too, right? Like you
Right.
won't even know if the YouTuber is real or not. They might just be an AI generated human with spilling out a bunch of information on certain topics and getting people involved in certain things or thinking about certain things in order to make money off of them, right? Like to make money off of trends. It's wild what's possible when you just start thinking about AI and AGI as like a money making tool, or just a tool in general for anyone to use.
It is a little bit worrying. I mean, it's going to we're very quickly going to be entering into an era where we are not going to be able to trust our own eyes and ears anymore. I think we already have entered that era. It's just people haven't realized it yet. Like, I don't think you can trust what you see and hear in media, but people aren't fully aware of that yet. And the AI is going to make that painfully aware very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a scary, weird time where everything feels unreal, and a lot of it is unreal, and it's so hard to parse out the truth. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why we want to make a podcast, right? We want to talk about this shit and try
Yeah,
to
man.
figure out what's real, try to make something real in a sea of just kind of unreal nonsense that's going on all the time.
I kind of feel like that's how a lot of communication and debates should be. Like, essentially just people figuring shit out together.
Yeah, and of course we're gonna get things wrong, guys. We're gonna have mistakes, errors, but leave your
Only
comments.
human.
Yeah, leave your leave your comments down in the in the comment section, and be part of the discussion.
Life
That's
is up here, but you can comment below.
Yeah, and no AGI in the comments, okay? Nobody, no comments from artificial people, just human people
How would
only.
we know, Saying? How would we know? They'd be so convincing.
Yeah, that's a problem, right?
They
A
might
lot
convince
of
us we're the NPCs.
yeah, a lot of comments feel like they're from bots. I know a lot of
Maybe
them
not
are from humans,
sophisticated
but
bots, but I think a true AGI would be almost indistinguishable, though.
mm,
I
yeah,
think
for
so.
sure. No, you're right. I'm sure they would be pretty indistinguishable.
which is also a very scary thought.
Right. Well, let's move off of AI. I think you wanted to talk about consciousness, right?
Yeah, the nature of consciousness. Oh boy, that's a little deep dive, isn't it? Right into the deep end. Okay, so I find consciousness probably to be the area of most fascination and least knowledge available to it. And I'd be very curious to pick your brain about how you feel about not only your consciousness, but the possible forms of consciousness, or what's different from a dog's consciousness to a fly's. Or I also wanted to talk a little bit about time dilation and how different species or different animals can experience time differently, like in the sense of like a time is like in a way experiencing a slowed down reality. Maybe that's why it's so hard to catch a fly or to, well, I don't know. I feel like there's something deeper that we as humans aren't yet exploring, and science has only barely scratched the surface, much in the same way we haven't even explored the entirety or hardly any of the oceans yet. I feel like consciousness is even deeper than that.
Hmm. Yeah, sometimes I wonder, like, have you ever watched Interstellar?
Yeah,
Interstellar is a very interesting movie
love that film.
about time and the effects of gravity on time. And there's some things in it that weren't totally accurate, but
Accurate.
there's some interesting like time dilation ideas that they're working with, like being under a lot of gravity is going to slow down time. Like it was funny, like people unpack or were unpacking it and showing the kind of errors with it, and it
Right.
really didn't cross my mind when I was watching the film, but it does not make a doesn't make a lot of sense actually when you watch it. Like you remember the point where they had the giant black hole and they went down to the water planet, and the water planet was
Yeah.
under this massive amount of gravity that was slowing down their time so dramatically that a minute down there was like years away from the black
Wasn't it?
hole.
Well, wasn't it because of the proximity to the black hole that was
Yeah.
causing that?
Yeah, it's like it's the gravity, um, which is caused by the proximity to the black hole.
Which is why the
Um,
tides were so crazy on that
yeah,
planet. Like the same way the moon creates tides on our planet, the black
right.
hole was creating these like mountain-sized
Tides.
waves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But the strange thing was that the uh like the people when they were standing on the planet were standing around like they were standing on Earth, whereas the like a scientist was explaining that they would be crushed, like they would be smushed to the planet because the gravity was so strong. Do you know what I mean? Like their proximity to the black hole would have um been like 100 times Earth gravity or something crazy like that.
yeah. I
And
imagine they wouldn't. I don't know the exact. I don't know the exact numbers,
right.
obviously, but I can. Yeah, I could probably imagine like they wouldn't just be able to just stand there chilling. You know what I mean?
No.
Like they would need some kind of crazy, I don't know, exoskeleton suit just to hold them upright. And
Well,
maybe they wouldn't. Even
yeah,
that wouldn't be good enough because like their internal organs would be destroyed. You know what I
exactly.
mean? So
Exactly. There would be so much
yeah.
pressure on their lungs and stuff they wouldn't even be able to breathe. They wouldn't be able to expand their lung. Anyway, it's a great movie, and it shows, if not totally accurately, with the human beings being there, but it does show like the time dilation accurately, apparently.
Right.
So
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
that's very interesting to me, and I wonder if gravity has that much of an effect on the perception of time. Um,
Well,
it opens
time.
up a lot of different ideas, right? Like, what about a fly? Like a fly, I don't know. This is maybe gonna be sound like a stupid question, but a fly has a very very weak amount of gravity, and the gravity of the
Right.
Earth has a very small effect on it. So does it experience time differently, or is that totally out the window?
I'm too much of a layman to answer that accurately about an educated guess. But one thing I would say is that insects, especially insects smaller than flies, traverse through the sky very differently, and because they have such little mass, they actually kind of move through the air as if the air was a fluid. So in a
Yeah.
way, it's like the sky is their ocean, so to
Hmm.
speak. So maybe there is some truth to, because gravity is imparted onto them in different ways because they're able to move through this medium in a different way. For example, we reach a terminal velocity when we fall through space and time in this atmosphere, whereas they don't. They remain stationary within that air, which is a fluid to them in terms of how they traverse through it.
Yeah,
It's very possible.
that's strange to think about. Like flies and other bugs are so small that they don't even feel the effects of gravity. It's like they're floating really for most of the time. Like
Yeah.
they are flapping their wings, but the effect of gravity is so tiny on their body that they barely have to move at all to keep floating, to keep flying. But you know, I don't mean to go completely off topic here, away from the consciousness idea, but I watched
Mm.
a video that was really interesting. I want to lay this on you because I think you would really like this.
Lay it on me.
There was a new study about bugs, where they were trying to figure out. They've been trying to figure this out for years. Why are bugs attracted to light? And they finally figured it out. Like, why do bugs fly around light sources at night? You've seen it. Everyone's seen it. Everyone knows it. Like, the bugs just come flying into your house if you leave the window open or whatever at
Like
night and there's a
moths
light
to a
on.
flame.
Yeah. So why is that an ancient, like, that's been around forever. People have been trying to figure that out even since ancient Rome. They've been trying to figure out why do bugs, especially moths, get attracted to light sources at night. And they finally figured it out, and it's actually kind of depressing. Um, the reason why insects get attracted to light, it's not actually that they're attracted to light, but it's based on their evolution. Of course, they have sensors on the top of their body that detect light, and
Mm.
the light coming from the
For the
sun
sun.
is the normal
Yeah.
source of light. And the bug, it has a lot of bugs, not all bugs are attracted to light, but um the ones that are especially attracted to light, they have sensors on the top of their body, and this is how they evolved flight. They have sensors on top of their body so that they can fly during the day, and they the sensors tell them if they're upside down or right side up. So this is part of basically what you're talking about, is that they don't really feel the gravity on their body, right?
Right.
That when they're flying, they can't like innately feel that they are right side up or upside down. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
I know
they
exactly what you're saying.
they're flying along, they might be upside down, they might not be, and the sensors are telling them that light is above you, so you are flying right side up. And if they fly upside down, their body automatically turns. Like it's a an automated system in their body that says like light must be on top. You know, light
Yeah.
cannot be on the bottom of their body. So they just automatically turn. And when they're flying at night and there's a light source uh, that is, you know, artificial, you know, a street lamp
They
or
need to
something like
realign
that.
to it.
So when they fly past it, the lights changes from the top of their body to the side or the bottom of their body. Their body automatically turns so that
Mhm.
the light source is above them again. And
Yep.
so they basically just go around in a circle, unable to turn away because the automated, like their body has like an automated response while they're flying to have the light above them. Otherwise, they're going to crash. So they just keep going around and around and around and around, endlessly, because they don't know. Uh, you know, they can't figure it out. They'll eventually like crash into it or crash into something else, and the only way they can escape the light is by like an outside force, like a wind gust or something like that, blows them far enough away to where the sensors on their body no longer have that light. You know, no longer can feel that light source, and then they can, you know, reorient themselves and fly away.
Yeah, much like us, they are prisoners to technology.
Technology. Well, it's
And this
prisoners to the
it's com
evolution, right? Prisoners to
Yeah,
your
yeah,
base instincts, maybe.
yeah, and manipulated using technology.
Hmm. Yeah, the base instinct just overrides wherever they want to go. They want to fly forward, but they have to turn. They can't escape that loop. It's yeah,
And
maybe there's a metaphor there.
but even in this conversation, there's a bit of a metaphor there because now we're going to go back into a loop back to AI and the problem being alignment, much like the alignment issue of these moths or insects having to align to these flames and being unable to really override that base instinct.
It's a little bit sad to think. And I'm kind of like bummed out about it actually now that I I know why. Like they're not actually attracted to the light. They're not like, ooh, the light, let's go there. They're just like, I can't fly away. How come I can't fly away? I'm flying away, and I'm here. I am. I'm back at the light again. Like what happened? They're just totally lost. They can't figure it out. It's
I mean, I really do feel like that's a metaphor for life, though. And I think that in society, and humans are experiencing that right now.
in what way, Shun?
I think we're going in circles, saying. I think we're all caught in loops, feedback loops. I think consciousness, the nature of consciousness, could be described as a sequence of feedback loops. And see how I'm keeping all this conversation tied together in a loop?
Give me an example so we can discuss it.
I think actually that's how scientists have unironically described consciousness as being a series of feedback loops.
In what way?
And again, I'm so much of a layman, I don't think I could do it justice, but I could have a go. Okay, let's just say if you want to look at it in terms of our day to day lives, well, we respond to stimuli in very similar ways, and we tend to fall in with certain patterns of behavior, if you like. And if you actually like lined up your day to day and like how much time you spent doing certain things or what you actually specifically did, sure you're going to be doing certain things that are maybe more spontaneous than others. But I assure you, probably the vast majority of you listening probably are falling into the same patterns of behavior, even if it's taking or manifesting itself in different forms. So let's say, for example, you're a smoker and you regularly go to the shop and you go to the shop and you buy a drink and you buy a packet of cigarettes or whatever. And this is like part of your routine, your habit. You're like a record that's stuck on repeat. You're going around in circles, circles, circles. But maybe you give up smoking or something. But then but you're still going to walk to the shop, you're still going to buy a drink. But maybe you replace the cigarettes with chocolate or something. But you're still fulfilling the ego. You're still caught up in that feedback loop of trying to satisfy the ego, regardless of what form that's taking. I think that's what happens to us in our day to day lives. We're like unable to switch. I think there's a 21 Pilots song where there's a few bars where he says, uh, "Switch the beat to avoid yesterday's dance, so to speak, or keep the beat to repeat yesterday's dance."
Hmm. No, is that an example? I
I'm just exploring
spitballing.
that topic with
Okay.
you.
I'm sitting here thinking about your earlier question when you were talking about what is consciousness, and do animals have consciousness, do insects have consciousness, what is the basis level of consciousness? And I'm thinking about like that bug flying around the light source, and does he actually have consciousness? Is he thinking, why am I stuck here? Why can't I go to, fulfill my needs? Like I'm hungry, I need to do this, I need to do that. what
Well,
what are
the
they actually
core.
thinking? Is there thought there? Is
I
there
mean, I don't know
consciousness
what I
there?
don't. I don't know what they're thinking. I think that's the problem is that science doesn't know, and
Hmm.
even if you go and talk to scientists that specialize in these fields, I'm sure they can give you their opinions about these things, but I assure you, not many of them could back that up with too much evidence. But basically, there's a core idea behind consciousness. I'll read this to you now. I quickly looked it up for you. So the core idea is that consciousness arises from a feedback loop in which a mind's ability to externally communicate an idea connects internally with the same mind's ability to receive ideas from others.
Hmm. So consciousness is like I can listen to an idea and then express it to someone else. Is that
Yeah. It kind of goes back to that whole conversation we had before. I'm not sure if we did that off podcast, but it was about, remember I told you about how there in my particular belief structure, there is no teacher and student. It's like you're all just continuously like learning from each other in a way. There is no like actual label of teacher and student, and this kind of ties into this in a way.
mm. So consciousness is about communication.
Well, you could even argue that. I mean, this again would be more my opinion than anything based in fact. But you could argue that consciousness is, in a way, a point of attention of the universe trying to communicate with itself.
Right. Because everything is part of the universe. So you're a point in the universe, I'm a point in the universe. We're communicating with each other.
Exactly.
We're the universe communicating with itself.
So we have the illusion of individuality of you are Saiyan, I'm Xun, but the reality is maybe we're the same thing, just communicating from different points of reference.
Right. That's like the yoga principle, the unity principle, like I'm you, you're me, I'm everything. That sort
Exactly.
of unity ideology. I think that's a good way to think about things if you're trying to gain like a deeper sense um of everybody and like a what is it, empathy, like a deeper empathy for other people to be able to think inside their shoes like as though they are you. I think that's a really good way to think in order to, be harmonious with other people and to relax your fears, angers, those type of things with what other people are doing is to just think of them as a part of you and think of the world as a part of yourself, to open up yourself to be uh to let other things be a part of you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter through what lens you're doing that. You could dress that up and give it any aesthetic you wanted. You could
Right.
say, for example, look at it from like, oh, I'm you in another life. If you want to do it in like a reincarnation lens, or you could say, you just want to treat someone as if you were treating yourself because it's not necessarily you, but it's like another expression of you. Like
Right.
say, a different version of you, not necessarily you in another life, but just a different expression of the same internalization.
Right. So the ability for me to like receive that idea and then communicate that idea um means that I'm conscious, right? But uh
Well, I don't know that it does. I
is
think
that
also it's very for us to prove consciousness. I think it'd be very difficult for us right here, right now, for us to prove that we're both conscious. I think we could do a very good job of it, and maybe we could convince the listeners that we are. But whether or not we actually have proven we're consciousness is another matter.
hmm, I'm just thinking like obviously a bug can't understand that idea and you know give it back to me, right? But I don't know. There are other ideas that bugs can communicate. For example, like a bee can communicate with another bee about like the
Hmm.
source of nectar in a certain area, right? They have a dance that they do that tells the basically the direction that you need to go based on the sun, and
Right.
then the length of or the distance that you need to travel to find this nectar. And they can go to the hive and do the little dance, and then the bees will look at that, see the dance, and go, "Oh, let me go check that out." And then they actually fly in that direction, that amount of distance, and find the nectar. It's very interesting. Um, that if bees can communicate, are they conscious?
Mm.
It's an interesting idea to wrap your head to try and wrap your head around.
I mean, and those are just the ways that they're communicating that we're aware of as
Mm,
well. It's
mm-hmm.
just what we're aware of that they're doing. So, I guess it's kind of like you could look at it from the angle of say technology. Like it's not very uncommon thing to know that the military is sitting on like prototypes and stuff that's probably like 30 to 50 years in advance of commercially available technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or much in the same way of like that's just what we know about. Imagine what we don't know about.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I I imagine there's some ridiculous stuff that they're hiding from other countries around the world, of course, by hiding it from us as well, like uh, programs that are beyond our understanding. Like, have you heard about the what was it,
I know what you're gonna
Cuba,
say, but I can't remember what it's called.
the Cuba um there was like a Cuba embassy or something like that. The embassy in
Yeah, the
Cuba,
sonic
the
weapon
sonic
thing.
weapon thing. Yeah, that was
I know
pretty
exactly what
wild.
you're talking about. Yeah, I knew you were gonna say that. Yeah, and maybe that stuff goes on more than we even aware of. And the one thing I thought was really fascinating, a little callback to the Small Soldiers film. There is a little scene in that where the commandos like commandeer a mousetrap and use it as a catapult to fling sleeping pills into the glasses of water of the blue pilled people in the world, kind of
Right.
representing society that are consumed by technology and just going along for the ride. And it's kind of funny because in the film they literally end up falling asleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think, and also, by the way, the pills in which they were flinging into the glass were blue. Just putting that out
Mm.
there. And yeah, I think there's so much like undertones in that film which are touching upon what we're talking about now. It's kind of hard not to bring that film up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a lot of that really wraps back around to the whole Matrix thing, right? Like the blue pill, red pill thing.
Exactly.
That's very funny. I wonder if they were fans of that movie, or did that movie come out before or after the Matrix?
Small Soldiers was 98.
And the Matrix was like 94 or something like that. I can't remember.
99.
99. Okay. All right, I'm wrong. That's
Yeah, I
interesting.
believe. Yeah, Small Soldiers had a budget. I'm not even looking at it now. I just know because my cousin and I looked this up before. They had a budget of about £40,000, and they made about 30 million. Sorry, £30 million, £40 million, and they made about 30 million profit. So it's quite a decent, but it seems like it was almost a propaganda piece. But what's strange about it was that even though it seemed a bit like a propaganda piece, it almost seemed like almost like an anti-war and anti-propaganda piece at the same time, kind of like a satirical nature that Starship Troopers had. So kind of an interesting vibe. And it was also interesting you brought up Terminator earlier
Hmm.
because there's a game that's really popping right now, Helldivers 2.
Right.
I actually tried playing it recently. It is a good game. And one thing it's oh my god, the amount of like Starship Troopers and
Hmm.
Terminator influences in that game alone are astounding. Like I don't know, there's some crazy synchronicities going on right now, saying, and it's interesting that one of the games popping off right now have these kind of influences from these kinds of films.
Right. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I did see that there's like an AI in the Helldivers 2. I haven't played Helldivers 2, but it does look like a very fun
Yeah,
game. I might check it out at some point.
yeah, it's a 4-player co-op shooter. It's a very good game. I'd recommend it to anyone.
It's very interesting though that they have that aspect as well, like adding on to the whole Star Troopers vibe. Adding AI into that is an interesting dynamic. I wonder how like the AI and the bugs get along, or do they get along, or do they fight each
Well,
other?
they don't. It's like there's two factions you're fighting against. You're like
Mm,
Super Earth, and you're these the elite Helldiver team, and you got to go out and like secure these planets. And it's interesting because it's done in the style of like a D&D campaign where there's like an actual game developer that's playing the
mm-hmm.
role of dungeon master, and he's like setting up like the task of Super Earth. Like this is what you've got to do, and you've got this time limit to like get control of these planets, and you get rewards if you do it, and you're also contributing to the war effort of hundreds of thousands of players while you're doing your campaigns and leveling up and whatever.
Right. Oh, that's wild. I wonder if at some point like Super Earth will be under threat. Like there'll
Yeah,
be
there
like
might
an
be special
invasion or
events and
something.
stuff. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you got to defend it and what have you.
That would be wild.
Or maybe that happens if you don't secure the control of those planets. They gain more control closer and closer to the Super Earth until
Right.
eventually they attack Super Earth. Because it's like a grid system. So it looks like they could conquer more territory on the grid and gain closer access to Super Earth, and eventually, like in Starship Troopers, eventually gain access to launch an invasion on Super Earth.
Right. That's wild. I
That's really
wonder.
cool, man.
I wonder what's gonna happen with that. That would be. I mean, that's an idea I don't think that's been played with. Um,
Not nearly enough.
Not nearly enough. Yeah, it feels like in a lot of these MMOs, the parameters are kind of more set. You know what I mean? Like they're very set up where
Right.
like, you know, they do like a WoW expansion or something like that, and everything changes, but it's exactly how the developers
Yes,
decided it, and
yeah.
it's not really affected at all by the player. The players are just kind of experiencing the what the developers decide to is going to be the new expansion. But Helldivers 2, it sounds like they're um in conjunction, like, oh, the you know, the dungeon master will see what the players are doing and then react to
Mhm.
that, which is
Exactly.
more interesting.
Yeah, and I'm really vibing with that so far. I've only played it for like one evening,
Mhm.
but I can already, and the difficulties as well. Like I was playing it on hard with a group of friends that already leveled up, and I was like, "Oh, this is pretty tough." And then I looked at the actual difficulty slider of all the possible difficulties, and hard was like number 3 of 9.
Wow.
It
Wow,
was like,
that's crazy.
"Whoa, okay, okay." So this is game maybe catered towards both casual gamers and serious gamers alike as well. On top of that.
Right. That's very cool. No, I'm very interested in the game. I'd like to try it. Maybe we'll play it on stream sometime. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I'll be down for that for sure.
I think it's like $30 or $40 or something like that. Pretty reasonable. It's been crazy the way that games have been inflated recently. Like the prices have
Right.
been going up and up and up like crazy. But it's good to see like some developers that are, you know, really taking new ideas and putting things together and then putting out a product that's not insanely high priced. Like something
Mm.
like Diablo 4. I know you played a lot of Diablo 4, but you've kind of let go of it, and I saw that they're coming out with a new expansion. It's going to be like $80 again to pay the new
Oh God,
expansion.
no! God, no! You couldn't pay me $80 to play that.
Yeah, it's crazy what Blizzard is expecting these days from their
Yeah,
games.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love hardcore. I love playing hardcore, as you know. But
Mm,
yeah, no, I couldn't get in. I did it for a while, but it's just not for me.
mm. Yeah, I resisted the urge. I resisted the temptation to buy that game because I feel like Blizzard is dead.
I mean, the current dev team doesn't seem to be up to the task, so to speak.
No, they seem like kind of neutered. It feels like
Yeah,
they don't have the same spunk as they used to. Like I'm sure the Helldivers team, they're like, you know, pulling out ideas. They're, you know, going around finding out what's the best way. Like let's you know, let's think of something new. Let's pull out, you know, some new
right.
wacky ideas and try to make them work. And I feel
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
Diablo or like Blizzard development team is, you know, okay, let's go back, let's figure out what worked in the past and let's try to like let's bring that back up again. Yeah, that's been tested, you know, that's been tried. Okay, let's put that together. You know what I mean, like they're really just formulaic in how they're making their games. They're not really thinking of new ideas or like trying to push the envelope at all.
I think there's a parallel in that in say cinema, especially it's like superhero movies, for example. Like that they're falling into too much of like trying to follow certain templates or agendas and not really having that same kind of creative freedom to actually create something new. It's all just rehashed, recycle, upcycling kind of way of thinking.
Well, that's something that AI might actually open up a
Be good
lot.
at tackling. Yeah,
It's
I
like
think so too.
not necessarily like making movies, but in helping smaller teams to make better movies. You know, you
Well,
can
well
have
that
like a
that
really small team of artists and you know, directors and stuff to make like an amazing blockbuster movie with just you know, using a bunch of AI to bring their idea to life, whereas it would have cost, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars to put it together, you know, 10 years ago or whatever.
was exactly what I wanted to bring up in our talk about AI is how it is going to open up a whole can of worms in a good way for all these developers and independent companies. They don't need to be AAA titles anymore because
Right.
they'll have the support of AI, and it'll take the weight off their shoulders and give them the creative apparatus that they need to also have that big powerful uh, force behind them to propel them and not have to worry about not having these like big companies of shit tons of money to help them do all the shit. 'Cause they won't have to cater to the publishers anymore. They'll just have to worry about making good games again. And I think that's what we've been missing out on for a long time.
Mm. A lot of good games come out recently. A lot of great games. It's inspiring to see. A lot of shit games that are very expensive, but a lot of good games that are relatively affordable, which is
And
totally
they're not AAA
inverse.
titles like Helldivers.
Yeah, Helldivers, Enshrouded, like bunch of different games that are coming down the pipe that
Yeah.
are pretty awesome and not crazy expensive, which is it's refreshing to see.
I'm kind of excited for it. I think like there is a lot of things to be scary and skeptical, and but there's a quote in Small Soldiers, another little callback here, where the main character of the Commandos, Chip Hazard, kind of has this scene where he's like he's got the girl tied up, and he kind of does this whole like little spiel about like, are you scared? Good, we're all scared. You'd have to be crazy not to be scared. And it's kind of like ominous and cool at the same time.
Mm, that's it's like a war line for sure. It's
Yeah.
like a war movie
And I
line.
think in the context of AI, I think that's very, very appropriate. You'd have to be
Right.
crazy not to be scared about it, but it is what it is.
No matter what you're doing, you might lose your job. You might be, influenced or taken down a weird path by AI. Uh, yeah. I mean, everybody's got to think about it. I think you would be crazy not to be scared,
Mm.
at least to some degree.
I'm kind of excited, but yeah, I imagine that everyone's right in feeling a little bit anxious about that because jobs are at stake and people's livelihoods and what have you. But also, I guess, like the stability of the climate, I mean, could affect things on a political scale or socio-economic scale that the likes of which we've never seen before. And we're going to go through this crazy, huge shift. And it might be a shift into the golden era, kind of speak, or a golden age where it's an almost utopian thing where AI frees up people to have more hobbies and more free time or leisure, and like a lot more like support for people with like mental health issues and stuff because there's a lot more money available or whatever. But let's be honest, the reality is probably will not be so much like that. It might be more akin to like Blade Runner or something, much more cyberpunk, dystopian, high tech, low life. And I think that's what a lot of people are fearful of. But I also think, some way, there's like a death drive that people have where it's almost like they want to manifest these realities. I don't know what it is. It almost seems like people want this to come about. It's almost like subconsciously there's this want for destruction. I don't know.
Mm, yeah. I mean, that's a theme going on. Like uh, the whole kind of destructionist and like anti-humanist ideas have been getting pushed for so long. Is Yeah, it's not good for anybody. Like the whole environmental movement has kind of been hijacked by a lot of
Right.
these people who just don't like human beings at all. Like they want to get rid of them. I was watching, this is interesting because this really goes to a British film or a British series that I was watching, and you should definitely check this out. You guys at home and shouldn't as well. The Three Body Problem. That's the Netflix version. I know it's a book as well, but the
I haven't seen
Netflix
that.
version has just come out, and it is so good. It is crazy good. So much fun to watch, but without trying not to spoil anything too much, is that there's people who just hate society. They don't like society, and they want to see it all come to an end. Basically, they want to like they have such a negative view of human beings and
Right.
our like effect on the planet that they would rather wipe everyone out rather than try to fix things or try to help humanity. And it's like,
Interesting.
yeah, it's
That
something that's come up a
reminds
lot. Yeah.
that reminds me of like a Satanist ethos where like the belief is like it's easier to invoke the devil than Jesus because it's easier to make everyone on the planet evil than it is to make everyone on the planet good.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like, wow, we've look at what we've done to this planet, look at all the terrible things, the species that we've wiped out. We just shouldn't exist, we just shouldn't be here because of the things that we've done wrong. We should cease to be alive. We should encourage people not to have kids. We should tell everybody that the planet is overpopulated. We should cease using nuclear power and oil and all that stuff. Just back off of all of that and live with less power, with less electricity. Go switch over completely into green power, even though it doesn't totally make sense in a lot of ways. Like
Yeah.
let's just we don't need to use all this power. We should just
What about my
back
hot
off.
tub
We
though,
should slow
saying? What
down.
about my hot tub and Tesla? How am I gonna power those?
Everything's going to take electricity, man. The more that we develop as a society, the more electricity is going to be necessary. Like the needs of it's interesting
Yeah.
to if you can look at a graph of how much electricity people have used over time. It's been exponentially rising um, over the years, especially the last like 10, 20 years. It's been crazy how much power usage everyone's taking up, right? Like, think about what people were using 20 years ago in terms of electricity, like
Mhm.
maybe a television, maybe their baseboard heaters or something like that. And, that might be a few lights. Um, but
Well,
now there's like, fully integrated home systems of cameras and computers and you've got your laptop and your PC and your game systems, your everything has a battery that's charged from a wall port. Like there's so much electricity that you're using for your phone and for all these other uh, extra things that make your life more interesting or better or more productive, right? Your
yeah, like the computers we're
Yeah,
using right now.
like these computers we're using right now, right? Yeah. So the more electricity we use, the more productive we are, and the more productive we are, and the more innovative we are, I think the better we can handle the effects that we're having on the planet. It's just about getting more like clean electricity. That's the most important thing, I think. Like finding ways to create electricity that's less damaging to the planet. And
That's quite challenging though, right? Like,
eh,
because green energy on the surface is not what it seems. For example, like say
yeah,
the materials required to produce, say, solar panels or whatever, what have you. Like, you're gonna find some kind of ecological effect some way or another. It's gonna be a little
yeah,
bit tricky to figure
absolutely.
out exactly what's truly green. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, there's of course nuclear energy is huge. Um, the amount of actual like byproduct material is incredibly low. Um, that's a ton of electricity that can be generated that way. But even beyond that, of course, there's fusion energy that's coming down. I mean,
That's
we
what we
don't know
want.
how
Yeah.
far we are along on that, but it seems to be just around the corner in a lot of people's minds, and in like the scientific community, they're pretty optimistic that they can get it done here and make that a reality, which would be amazing. But just having those type of options and like increasing those is going to be our I think our route to making human beings more sustainable with the planet and not not destroying ecosystems and stuff like that. But trying to eliminate everybody, I think, is just psychotic. And yeah, it's wild to see people advocating for that type of thing, advocating for the destruction of their country or advocating for the destruction of humanity. The elimination of people from the planet just doesn't vibe with me at all. It's wild.
No, I guess that you wouldn't be in Hitler's corner then.
No, I mean even Hitler, I don't think wanted to destroy the whole planet, right? Like
No, he
he
was just
wanted
eugenicist, right?
right. He wanted to make like a better place for him and his people, right? Like I mean, people
Well, you
throughout
know you're
history have
fucking up
done
if
shit
you're
like
making
that.
Hitler
Genghis
look good,
Khan or
right?
something like that. I mean, all it takes to make someone look good is a few hundred years. You know what I mean? A monster can look like a good person in a few hundred years.
Right. You're very right.
Think about like the Mongol general like Genghis Khan killed millions and millions of more people. And now he's kind of like whitewashed, like, oh, he's he opened up trade
His
with
DNA lives on.
Asia and Europe, and he did this and he did that. Like, dude, the amount of people that motherfucker killed, like, holy crap, he killed so many people. It's crazy.
He had
He
a lot
he
of kids
changed
too.
he changed the carbon footprint of human beings on the planet. They reduced like the number of people he killed is just wild. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, it just takes time, and then people will look at the good things that came from that. Well, Hitler, like the European Union never would have occurred without Hitler. You know, that type of stuff. People will say that in a
Right.
hundred years.
I don't know that from my personal belief structure, I don't want to try and ascribe evil or good to anyone or anything. So
Mhm.
sometimes I think even if something has a veil of evil on the surface, I think that maybe those are necessary evils. Maybe it makes humanity come together, for example, or what have you. Like, or helps to like realign the current direction of the human race because it kind of forces like a revolution of ideas, so to speak. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to ascribe any evil, because who knows? For behind closed doors, maybe the angels and demons are all friends, and it's all like just part of the show, and it's like they're just orchestrating fatalism acting out here on the mortal earth.
Mm, I mean, evil is slippery. It's a slippery term. Like
Mm,
what you ascribe evil to. Like, are we gonna ascribe? Let's say there's an AI that does come about, an AGI, and its prerogative is, you know, create the ultimate communist utopia, and it's created by China or something like that, and it goes around and just massacres everybody and totally ruins the entire planet. Is that evil? Is that AGI evil? It's like it's done evil acts, but you know,
is it inherently evil?
is it inherently evil? Is it an evil entity? Is it a spawn of hell? Well, it's so hard to ascribe those things, but I guess it's just about the actions, right? Is it an evil? Is it doing evil acts? Um, then maybe
Well,
it's
I think,
evil.
but who's the one doing the judging of what is? Who's the arbiter of evil? Who's the one saying what is evil and what is good, and what gives them the right to ascribe evil or good onto others? What, are they omniscient?
Mm. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like the people who are planning or who are saying that humanity should die out. We should stop procreating. We should stop growing. We should the human race should cease to exist. Those people are thinking of humanity as like a whole and saying yes, humanity does evil acts, and so then humanity is evil. Humanity doesn't deserve to exist,
Right.
without parsing out the nuance of like, well, those some of those people, right? Evil exists, yes, but um in order for good to exist, evil also has to exist, right? Like there are
Yeah.
good people and evil people, and evil acts and
You
good
have to have
acts.
smooth.
And like what we need to look for is for the amount of good to overwhelm the amount of evil. You know what I mean? Like we want to have more good than evil. I don't think that evil completely overwhelms good in this world. I think there's a lot of good as well.
I think so too, but I also feel like we should be more accepting of that evil, not as in like, oh yeah, it's great that we've got evil in the world, but just in like a, not allowing it to, instill a negative energy onto us, so to speak. One, I think that gives it power, and two, I feel like it kind of misses the point. I feel like a lot of things in the world are teachers in the sense of any negative experience you've had could be something that you can grow from and develop and use to build resilience from. And I don't like the idea of that we're forced to interpret things as either ways or troughs. I think they can be both. I think something could be seen, something positive that happens to you that seems like it's so great. Maybe later on down the line really screws you over. Who's to say that thing was so good after all? Maybe it just has the illusion of looking good, and maybe you shouldn't judge by appearances so quickly.
Yeah, my late grandfather on my grandfather-in-law, before he passed from cancer, he often would talk about like his favorite Buddhist saying, or like his favorite story was about a man in a village who had a son and a horse, and the
Mm,
man, he was in the village, his horse ran away, and the villagers said, oh, that's terrible luck. Like, we're really sorry to hear that. And he said, good luck, bad luck, you never know. And then, a day later, the horse ran back with another horse, and now he's got two horses. Um, and they said, wow, that's great luck. Like, congratulations. And he said, good luck, bad luck, you never know. And then the
Mm.
new horse that horse brought back, his son was riding it, and it bucked him off and broke his leg. And the villagers say, like, oh, that's such bad luck, so sorry to hear that. And he said, good luck, bad luck, you never know. And a week later, the army comes to recruit people for the war, and because his son's leg is broken, he doesn't have to go to war. And the villagers say, good luck, bad, wow, that's so lucky. And he says, good luck, bad luck, you never know. It's just every situation, if you can look at it from like a neutral perspective, like, we just don't know what this is going to mean, what future effects this is going to have. Then you can have like a better outlook on life, and not be so distraught when bad things are happening, or not be so elated when good things are happening. Then you can kind of see the forest for the trees.
Well, I think deeper in that is the not having the outcome dependence as well,
Mm.
right? Like, it's not being so attached to that outcome. And like, say in StarCraft, like, if you do get too hung up on the outcome, every game you lose will feel bad. And it's like, but then you're going to detract away and lose sight of, say, the things you need to work on that happened during that game that you could have done. And do you know what I mean? Like, you're not actually going to review what you could have done differently as appropriately, because you're going to be in that emotional state of being caught up in the loss.
Yeah.
And equally with the win, you're going to be caught up with the elation of the win, and rather than actually thinking, okay, I won this game, but I could have performed better, I could have done this better, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, for sure. That's the Stoic principle, is not focusing on results,
Right.
letting go of results, and focusing on efforts rather than results. And yeah, it's definitely the way to improve, is to let go of those outcomes, and focus on what you can do to make yourself better. Because the better you are, the more adept you are, the outcomes will become better. And anything can happen, right? Just
Right.
simple luck can cause wins and losses in life. Just random occurrences that have no effect on you, or have no, you can't affect them, sorry, like, you have no control over them. So getting upset about those wins and losses is just going to cause you to experience more hardship, because you're not focusing on what you can do. And you're just worried about things that are completely out of your control. So yeah, I definitely take that to heart. And I think that that's one thing that people do way too much. Like, if they're thinking about, for example, thinking about the environment constantly, these type of things can lead you down a really dark path, where if you're
Right.
on obvious, like, just constantly thinking about how the environment's being destroyed, or you're constantly thinking about like a war that's hundreds of miles or thousands of miles away from you, and like making that part of your daily mental, your basically your daily
Daily dose
mental,
of insanity.
yeah, your meal for the day, your mental meal, what you're consuming into your head is news about those things all the time. Then what comes out of you is just going to be warped and very
Right.
negative. So yeah, it's important to recognize what things are in your control, what things are outside of your control, and realize that not everything is as as bad news as you might seem, right? Like, you gotta recognize, like, good news, bad news. We'll see. Um, okay, this war is happening. This thing is happening. Is that good or is that bad? You have to wait to pass judgment, because you never know. And just taking that mentality will help you to be more positive in your own life, and like have more concentration on what you can actually do to make your life better, and to make people's around you life better. And It's difficult. It's not easy. It's easier said than done, but I think that's something that people need to work on, and I'm trying to work on myself as well.
Yeah, I could definitely see that being an issue in society at the moment. As far as the control thing goes, though, I'm curious. Do you think what do you think about we were talking about the nature of consciousness, but human beings seem to be, at least as far as we are aware, out of all current life forms, we seem to have this capacity to get in our own way, but also have control over some of our mental faculties in a way that other species don't seem to, that we can fully understand anyway. Do you think that this is like both like a hindrance to us as well as being like a great evolutionary thing? Because it seems like humans naturally have this like desire to be in control, and that gets them caught up with issues such as attachment and what have you. And they could even like get in their own way cognitively because they're obsessing over certain things and not like freeing themselves up to focus on what they actually would like for more fulfill them or what have you, and like rather than like spending all day on Twitter arguing about macro issues they can't actually influence or have any real contribution towards, they can instead focus things on a more local level regarding those issues or their own lives.
Yeah, I think you need to separate everything between things you can control and things you can't control.
Right.
Um, Enforcing control over things that you have control over, like enforcing your will on the things that you have control over, is just discipline. It's controlling your own actions, um, that are actually going to affect your life. And then uh, the problem is when you're trying to control things that are outside of your control, whether that's outcomes at work or outcomes in the world, outcomes, globally, things that are not in your control. Trying to control those just leads to pure suffering, right? Like, I can control what I eat today. That is something I can control, and that's going to lead to a better life if I control that properly. If I control what I do in terms of, this podcast, or, if I just decide to just mess
Mm.
around and, play video games, or just, be a complete degenerate and not get any work done, then that is something that's going to affect my life, right? Like, I'm going to have a worse life if I don't control those things. So yes, the fascination, like the obsession with control is detrimental if it's control over things that are outside of your control, but it's very uh, helpful if it is things that you actually have control over. You need to control those things in your life, and I think that's where people get um, really messed up. Is like they're spending so much time thinking about and trying to have some effect, which is
Right.
to control something that is just way outside of their ability to control, and then they're completely ignoring the things that are within their ability to control, um, and their life is falling apart, makes them even more anxious, makes them even more frustrated, and then they eject those frustrations out onto the world in trying to control even more things, you know, social issues, or the government, whatever the government's doing at that time, or something overseas, even in another country, or something a company is doing that they don't like. Yes, those things are important to, you can voice your opinions over them, but trying to control things that are outside of your control are very, like, it's very detrimental to your mental health and stability, and your ability to control the things that are actually inside your own realm of personal control will be left unattended if you're constantly looking outside of yourself.
How would you, if you had to give advice to someone that maybe didn't fully understand what you were talking about, how would you describe to them things they could actually do in their day to day lives to start to put that into action? Like, what do you think are some like very simple things people could start doing to start to manifest that, and not just have to like assume what they need to do? Because a lot of people, ironically, maybe aren't good at control as well in the terms of their autonomy and thinking about what they should do without direction or what have you. So what would be your advice on things that people could do in their day-to-day lives to start to create that healthier balance?
It makes it sound like, I don't mean to make people feel like a baby, but control your bedtime is like the main thing I would say, is like control when you go to bed, because being a person, it's very easy as an adult to just go to bed super late, to like watch your phone in bed all the time, and stay up really late one night of the week or 3 nights of the week. Especially on the weekend, you work all week, and maybe you go to bed at like 11 or 12 o'clock at night and wake up at 6 or 7 in the morning, and go to work. And then on the weekend, you stay up till, 3 or 4 in the morning and wake up at noon or whatever. This is normal for a lot of adults, but I think controlling your own bedtime, like deciding when you're going to sleep and figuring out like a good bedtime for yourself. You have to sleep, right? You're gonna have to sleep. What are you doing that's so important to your uh at 1 or 2 in the morning? You know what I mean? These are
I
the hours
mean,
that are like, you're almost kind of like self-harming at that point when you're staying up that late, where you're not really getting a lot of shit done at 1 or 2 in the morning. But you're kind of enjoying the fact that uh you're just up at that time. You're doing something that maybe you shouldn't be doing. You're kind of like reveling in the time um of being up at that late hour, whereas you could just go to bed at 11 or 10 o'clock at night and wake up and do exactly what you were going to do at 1 in the morning, but do it like in the morning when you wake up. And it would be a little different, but it wouldn't be, um you know it would be more healthy for your body, for your mental state, if you were to just control your sleep time. If you control your sleep time, like, I'm going to go to bed at 11 p.m. every night of the week, and I'll wake up at 7 a.m., every day of the week. That will increase your mental health. It'll increase your ability to control yourself. Basically, it'll help you to not, binge on snacks, or um to have like really poor sleep. Like, sometimes if you go to bed at 3, maybe you wake up at 6 and you've only slept for 3 hours, and then you're kind of like sluggish and slow the whole day. You don't get really anything done. um just having a bedtime would be a great place to start. um and it doesn't take long before, if you enforce it on yourself, if you really treat yourself like you're somebody who maybe you're in charge of taking care of. If you were in charge of like your kids or whatever, and you tell them like, no, bedtime is 10 p.m., bedtime is this time, right? You can enforce your kids to go to bed at that time. But a lot of people have a struggle to do that if you're with themselves. But if they were able to treat themselves like that, like they were their own child, like they were somebody that they were in charge of taking care of, then they would get a lot more stuff done. They would have a lot more energy to control their own actions, and to do the best for themselves, to do what's right for themselves, if they just get that sleep and get that cycle down. And if you do that for just a short amount of time, like not even a week, you sleep at the same time every single night, you find yourself waking up without an alarm after a week,
mm.
and like your body is ready to go, and you'll have a lot more energy, and you'll be, on top of it. um yeah, I would say that would be like the biggest piece of advice. That would be like the first step to anybody who's trying to get their life in order, like trying to figure things out and take control of what they can control.
I do actually agree with you about all that. Meanwhile, I'm sat over here recording this podcast at 2 a.m.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're getting shit done at 2 a.m., what you are right now, then I think that's good.
Right.
I feel like a lot of people, they work like a 9 to 5 throughout the week, and then on the weekends they stay up really, really late, and they don't, they kind of do whatever until 2 a.m., 3 a.m., drink or go party or something, and then their sleep is terrible for the rest of the weekend. They don't get anything done, and then they're struggling to get back onto the 9 to 5. Getting back to bed at the right time during the week. I mean, I know it because I've done it, but I just
Right.
feel like it's Yeah, it's really detrimental to your ability to work on things that are actually going to affect your life, like whatever hobbies you have, whatever things that you're trying to accomplish outside of work are actually way more important than the things that you're uh, messing around with at 3 in the morning. If you're just a normal person.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I do think, going back to what we were talking about earlier, I do think there's like a bit of death drive in people where we're doing so many things that we know are really not good for us and
Mm.
probably even put us into an early grave, or at least shorten our ability to enjoy life, so to speak. I don't know what's going on there. I also think that maybe there's some escapism going on. Like they're having these lives that are unfulfilled, so they want to stay up late doing what they want because that gives them the illusion of control, gives them the illusion of like being able to do what they want. If you know what I'm saying.
There's a bit of denial as well, like, oh, this is
Hmm.
fine. That's not really gonna have that effect on me. But there's like a trade-off, right? It's like your enjoyment of life and your experience of life that might be diminished by like trying to stay alive for as long as possible. For example, for me, like I know that if I went out running every single day and like had my cardio really, really good, like I'm probably gonna live longer, you know what I mean? But I'm not
Right,
out there
right.
running every day because I don't like running. It's just the trade-off to me, the trade-off to me feels it feels too steep, you know? Maybe I will do some running. I have done running in the past. But uh, the trade-off right now for me does it just feels too steep. I think that's what a lot of people are doing in their head. They're doing that like mental calculation of like, um, you know, it's also that you don't know when you're gonna die, right? You have no idea your own
Right.
mortality, and a lot of people feel like they're never gonna die, and some people feel like, well, um, I'm gonna die of something. It might as well be from this thing that I enjoy. I might as well just
Yeah, and maybe that
enjoy
gives
it
them a
now.
sense of control as well because they're in a way like choosing their poison.
Mm.
But I guess also there's an argument to be said for, well, what if you do like eat only vegetables and like work out and you're like super healthy, but then you get hit by a bus at like 35 and you might as well have just like lived a life doing what you wanted because you lived as if you were going to live to 100 or whatever to like set yourself up for that longevity, but it was cut short by an exterior means.
Well, I would take that argument and apply it to like work. And I would also say like, well, if you were, for example, like eating whatever you wanted and being like a fat slob and
Hmm.
you would probably feel a lot worse during those
Right.
35 years. If you were eating healthy and doing a lot of those things, you would feel good during those 35 years. So wouldn't you want to have 35 years of feeling good over, 35 years of feeling kind of
Oh,
shitty
I
and
would, yeah.
slobby? But
I think if you're going to be a
uh,
hedonist, then I think you should at least enjoy it. I think that's one of the issues is that
mm,
there's a lot of people out there that are mentally unwell and they're living like slobs or what have you, but they're
yeah.
not even enjoying living like a slob. They're not enjoying sitting on the couch and
Yeah,
like
they're
eating
hating
pretty
themselves
or
the whole
fast food. Yeah,
time.
that's the problem. If they could at least enjoy doing it, that'd be something, right? I think maybe that's the first step. If you are going to sit there and do these detrimental things, at least find a way of actually enjoying it. Because what's the point otherwise?
Hmm. Well, I would take the argument, what you're saying about like, if you're just gonna die at 35, why wouldn't you just have fun and apply it to like work? If you're working at a job right now that's really shitty, you don't enjoy it, you're not happy where you're working, you're not happy what you're doing. Like, you could die by getting hit by a bus at any time. Realize that whatever you're working for, whatever money that you're gonna get, sometime in the future, maybe you're working towards paying off your house, or you're working towards trying to buy that nice car, or you're trying to, pay for, I don't know, whatever it is that you're trying to make that money for by working that shitty job. Like, you have to realize that you can die at any time, and um finding something that you actually enjoy, even if it doesn't pay as much money, I think is a better way to live your life. I, I just think about my own situation, like how I've kind of switched off of working a job that I don't like and trying to make something out of my passion. And if I died tomorrow, I don't think I would have any regret for doing that. I wouldn't think like, man, I wish I would have
Right.
made more money. You know what I mean? Like, I would think like, wow, I'm glad that I did what I wanted to do, and I enjoyed the time. Uh, yeah, I think that that's the right way to live, is to find something that you can do that's fun. Like, I'm also just so I'm so it feels disappointing to me just to think about this, is like people who did something, who went to school for something that's not even really in their interests, like something like accounting.
Mm.
Imagine a person who went to school for 5 or 7 years or whatever to get, an accounting degree. I don't even know how long it is. What is it? Maybe 5 years, 4 years? I can't remember what an accounting degree is,
I,
but I think you have to do
it's
some you
three
have
or
to do
four.
some ridiculous amount of extra schooling after you actually get your degree. Like, you have to take all these like different courses and stuff to get all the, different classifications for accounting, so that you can do, corporate or different. Anyway, there's a lot of schooling to go through. I don't think anybody is like excited about accounting. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I'm sure
it's
there's some people, but maybe not very many.
yeah. Out of the thousands, millions of accountants out there, I'm sure that there are a few, but most people are not super excited about it. I think AI is going to take over accounting really, really quickly. And
Quite
imagine you've
possibly.
done all this shit to learn this shitty job that you don't like, and it just gets taken away by AI. Like, an AI accountant can do your job way better than you, way faster, and you're just out of a job now. Like, these type of things can happen very quickly. It's not dying, but it's like things are changing so rapidly. Um, you got to do what you want to do. You can't be fucking around with some boring thing that you don't like doing, and then you know it could just be swept away from you. Whatever you've worked um, on earning through all those countless hours of disciplining. You're wasting your discipline, is what I'll say. Like, all of that
Mm.
discipline of pushing yourself to do something that you didn't want to do, in order to control the future, right? You're trying to set yourself up for a life that is,
Which is
uh,
foolish, in my
yeah,
opinion.
you're trying to set yourself up for a cushy life, right? Like, okay, I do this degree, and then I get this designation, and then I do this job that I don't like for 20 years or 30 years, and then I have this, nest egg of money, so that I can do what I want to do, right? So that I can, go to this
Finally
place
start
or
enjoying
whatever, finally
life.
start enjoying life. You're you're basically using all of your discipline on yourself to control yourself, to control the future, right?
And you're not
And
even enjoying the present
you're
while you're
not
doing
enjoying
it.
the present, and you are doing exactly what we're saying, is trying to control something that is outside of your realm of control. You don't know what's going to happen with your job. You don't know what's going to happen with that nest egg. Like, whatever you're saving, if you're putting it into the stock market, or you're putting it into a bank, or wherever you're putting it, that could go away. If you're putting it into a house, like, the housing price can drop, that can go away. Everything
Housing
can
market
go
could
away.
crash.
You can, and it's all just a metaphor for death, right? You could also die, and never get to enjoy those fruits of your labors, right? So what you need to do is enjoy the process of labor, right? You have to find, like, you have to enjoy the fruits, but you have to enjoy the process as well. So you have to find a way to enjoy the process. You have to find something that you can do
Mm.
that's enjoyable, so that you can enjoy life while it's happening, rather than try doing all this stuff to try and control the future. Yeah, you're gonna have future plans. Yes, you're gonna have those type of things, but those can change at any moment, because the future is not certain. The future is not in your control. So try to just control the things that are within your realm, right? Control what you decide. Change what you want to do, or change what you're doing, so that you can do what you want to do, so that you can enjoy yourself while it's happening. And you might be surprised that, uh, those things might actually result in, more beneficial outcomes, a better future, even if it feels like a really dangerous, or um, a more uncertain future. The future is never certain. no matter how certain you think it is. Um, whether it's being an accountant and having a lot of money or whatever, those are not certain outcomes.
Yeah, the only thing certain is change, death, and this moment now, and this moment now, and this moment now. And I think if people like live their lives more like they're having ceremonial tea or something, and really going into that process more and enjoying those mundane details of that process is probably going to give them more power rather than trying to control everything and stop being so obsessed about the outcome, like the stimulant of that caffeine that you're trying to get from that tea in the first place.
Yeah, we were going to talk about stimulants. That was another
Yeah,
thing on the agenda here, so that's a nice segue. Um,
I was teeing you up. Good catch.
so, uh, tea and coffee, stimulants that are used in every single day life. I feel like they're underexplored in terms of their effects on the body and the effects on the mind.
Right.
Um, I feel like people are just kind of phoning it in and just doing kind of what everybody else is doing in a lot of cases, and consuming large amounts of coffee, consuming large amounts of tea without really exploring the effects on their own body, and just kind of like taking a moment to think about like, oh, what is this actually doing to me? Because it does have a really serious effect on your mental state and your body as well. Like, let me give you an example here, Shun. So,
Go for it.
my wife is a really big enjoyer of black tea. Like, she likes Earl Grey,
Oh
and
yeah, okay. It's good
she
tea.
she drinks Earl Grey all the time. And when we were living together at one point, she was drinking tea like maybe 3, 4 times per day. Just
It's quite a
just
lot of caffeine.
just quite a lot of tea. And she was having these really bad like bowel problems. Like, she was having a really hard
Mm,
time in the bathroom. She was, struggling a lot with constipation. And we were looking at our food and going like, what are we eating differently? Like, what is causing this? What's the problem? And we are thinking about it a lot, and changing our diets, and like trying to figure out what we can do to make that problem go away. And then I think we finally talked to somebody who mentioned like, what are you eating on a daily, and what are you drinking? And she's like, oh, I drink tea. And how much tea? Like 3, 4 cups per day. And what kind of tea is it? It's Earl Grey. And oh, caffeine irritates your bowel. Caffeine is a bowel irritant,
right.
and it will cause problems with your bowel if you're drinking too much of it per day. And like, wow, I had no idea about that. Never explored it before. And yeah, she stopped drinking tea, immediately went away. So that's just like a small example of we just don't have the full idea. A lot of us are just kind of following along with what other people are doing and not really thinking about caffeine and other stimulants and what they do to your body.
Yeah, I can't remember if I brought up that story on the podcast about the heart surgeon. I think it was, maybe I'm not sure if it was a heart surgeon, but it was a surgeon, and he ran out of gum, and he usually chews gum to help him concentrate while he's working. And he asked one of the med students for some gum and got given some gum, and turned out to be nicotine gum, unbeknownst to him initially. And he said that he was able to finish the operation like 3 times as fast with like the kind of intense focus that he didn't even think possible. But even though it helped him work faster and work more efficiently and have that higher sense of attention, it actually kind of scared him and made him not want to even touch that substance again, even though it did have that effect and helped him perform. It almost was scary to him.
No, this is something I've never experimented with because I never smoked cigarettes or anything. Nicotine as
I
a
can
as
speak
a
to that.
stimulant. Yeah, it's like, explain kind of what the effects are of nicotine, and how you've experienced it.
Well, it definitely gives you kind of like a head rush. And if you say you haven't had any like nicotine for a long time and you go back to like trying to smoke the way you smoked before, it will make you feel so lightheaded. It's enough to put you on your ass. It's like the intensity of the effects are so quick as well. It's not like drinking alcohol where it kind of creeps up on you and suddenly it hits all of a sudden. It's actually like quite instantaneous. And in fact, in the UK, uh, we don't roll blunts typically. Like that people nowadays do. It's more mainstream to roll blunts these days because it's been because of the influence from like America and what have you, and rap culture. It's now much more like acceptable and knowledge. There's much people more knowledgeable about even just rolling blunts and stuff. So people do that more now. But in general, we used to only roll joints, which is tobacco mixed with marijuana, and that gives you a different kind of high. You don't have this kind of like halo cerebral high of just the fuzziness in your brain anymore. You have this intensity, this sense of focus, and it kind of gives you like this different like sense of being a pilot in your own mind almost. And yeah, I don't know exactly how I'd put it into human words, but I would definitely say it's so potent that I'm surprised that there's people out there that are anti-drugs, yet they have like cigarettes or caffeine or what have you, and it's kind of weird because they don't consider these stimulants to fall under those same categories. They just want to say, oh, like weed's terrible or drugs are terrible, but meanwhile they're happily sipping their tea or happily, tooting their cigarette.
Hmm. That's interesting. The nomenclature. There's I always heard that it was spliffs are what is with tobacco, and I
Yeah,
always
you
think
call
of
them
it.
spliffs as well.
I always think of
Yeah,
a joint as like just a purely weed thing, but a blunt
right. But in
is like a fat one. I don't know.
yeah, in the UK, if you were to say joint, they would assume you meant tobacco mixed
Oh,
with
really?
weed, is what I'm trying to say.
That's
In the
interesting.
UK,
That's
obviously we
interesting.
call it a spliff. Obviously we call it a spliff, but if you were to say the word joint to the British person, they would probably assume you meant tobacco mixed with weed,
Hmm.
unless you said blunt.
I see. I see. Yeah, it is strange that people don't internalize that like as that these things are drugs, and they get really like uptight about certain drugs while utilizing their drug of choice constantly. But that just goes to show you like my earlier point is that people are not thinking about these things as drugs at all, and they're just kind of utilizing them as like a cultural thing without thinking about the effects that it's having on their body. So somebody like my uncle was drinking like 6 cups of coffee per day um, when he was doing programming. He's a programmer for like a big company in Canada, um, and he's drinking every single day 6 cups of coffee, and I'm sure that's doing some really harmful
Yeah,
effects to his kidneys and to
probably.
his colon and all kinds of different stuff. Like that's causing a lot of issues for his hi- everything that needs to deal with urine and cleaning the blood and excreting that drug, right? But he didn't even think about it for years and years and years, like maybe 15, 20 years doing the exact same thing. And then he tried to quit coffee because he was having some of those problems, and just ruined him. It totally like
Mm,
was like a massive undertaking for him to try and just quit coffee, which is not what you think about when a lot of people think about when they think about drugs, right? Like they think about, oh
right.
yeah, it must be so hard to quit heroin or something like that. It must be so hard to quit weed, or it must be so difficult to quit cocaine or something like that. But they don't really think about the drugs that they're using all the time and actually being difficult to stop.
Well, the dependencies on those substances manifest in different ways. For
Mm.
example, weed is a psychotropic, and you can't really develop a physical dependence on it, but you can develop a psychological dependency on it. So, and that could happen to a lot of drugs. You could develop these psychological attachments and dependencies where, as far as you're concerned, you need this to survive. And yes, there will be chemical imbalances in your body that become affected by not taking that substance anymore. But depending on what the substance is, within a few weeks, your body will level out again. So then it's purely psychological and psychomatic how you deal with that afterwards.
Well, let's talk about our own experiences with like caffeine and stuff like that. Like uh, I have
I
been
used to drink coffee a lot as a kid, by
mm,
the way. My my
really?
dad my dad was a record producer, and I used to chill at his studio, and he used to have like a pot of coffee all the time, drip coffee, right, like a
Mhm.
proper coffee machine. And as a kid, I was helping myself to the coffee all day long. So there was times in my life as a kid I did consume quite vast amounts of coffee.
Hmm. And how did that affect you?
I almost feel like it both. I don't know exactly of all the effects it had on me, but in a way, I do feel like it maybe increased certain areas of development and maybe decreased others as well. Like I feel like it maybe gave me. I remember watching a lot of because I also had access to like films to watch because he had a TV with a built-in VHS player, like a
Mhm.
combination thing, so I could watch VHS tapes while chilling in the studio while he was recording in the other soundproof rooms. And I was watching all kinds of films. Interesting, one of them being Starship Troopers. Another interesting one, I mean, interestingly enough, of Adam Sandler, Airheads. I remember that's a funny film. Airheads. If you want to watch a weird, wacky film, that's a good one. Um, but I remember like there's a film called it was a Hellraiser. I'm not sure you've heard of Hellraiser. And I was
Mm.
thinking about this film when you mentioned it earlier, because when you mentioned we were talking about you can't put it back in the box. And as soon
Mhm.
as I said the words you can't put it back in the box, I was thinking of Pandora's box and also Hellraiser. And the whole Pinheads thing is, you open the box, you summon me. And it's like Hellraiser in a way is like representing AI, and we are like summoning AI through Pandora's box. And once we've opened this box, it can't be put back in, and it's like I don't know, like yeah. In a way, I think even from a young age, because I was consuming caffeine, it gave me like a higher attentions. It was almost like maybe even it helped me develop my ADHD. I don't know, but certainly made me have a different kind of attention span, ways of interfacing with the world slightly. I think it has a profound effect, and people don't realize it.
The whole rise of ADHD is very interesting as well, like, how much ADHD has become a part of, society.
I think we're programming people to have it essentially. Like
Mm.
the whole like TikTok brain meme, I think is very pertinent here.
I think that, another drug that is uncommonly discussed that may be having a big effect on that as well is sugar. The amount of refined sugar that's going
So much of
into
it, yeah.
yeah, refined sugar is a huge thing, and uh, vegetable oil as well. There's like certain um, vitamins and minerals that actually get depleted in your body when you consume large quantities of these things, like vegetable oil or sugar. Uh, your body gets depleted of those minerals, and it actually causes your body to crave food when you run low on these minerals, and that actually causes you to eat more. And if your only source of food is more refined sugar and vegetable oil um, products,
Mm.
I think that is what really fuels the obesity epidemic. Is like you eat food that depletes you of these minerals, which makes you hungry. You're not actually hungry, like, you're not in need
You're
of
just hungry for those
calories.
minerals.
You're hungry for those minerals. Your body doesn't have, like, there's no,
Natural
like,
source of those minerals.
there is a natural source, but there's no, um, natural signal that your body can send you besides hunger that will get you to consume those minerals, right? Like, where we've evolved, all your body needed to do was we need X mineral, we need X thing, we just eat. And when we eat, we'll get those minerals, but if whatever we're eating is constantly depleting us of those minerals, then the only signal that our body can send us is hunger in order to try and acquire those minerals. Then it's like a
Right.
feedback loop, right? Where you get more depleted, you get more hungry, and you just keep getting fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter. And I think that's the feedback loops that's causing the obesity epidemic, and those foods are not only causing the obesity epidemic, but also causing things like ADHD and other mental disorders, anxieties, and stuff like that that are
Quite
inherent
possibly.
in our culture right now. It's just
Right.
everywhere.
Yeah. And corporations know that that's also highly addictive. Those fats,
Hmm.
sugars, and what have you. Those are highly addictive and going to be great to put in their products to sell well. So we're just going to get a feedback loop of more of that.
Hmm.
So we're going to get more of what we want and less of what we need. And we're creating this service-based industry of just catering to our hedonistic desires as opposed to our human needs. And your body is not really well attuned to be able to communicate with you very effectively. You kind of have to do a bit of heavy lifting to actually pay attention to your body. And I think this is the thing we're lacking as humans, is this level of like self-awareness, introspection required to actually be more attuned to our needs and what our bodily functions. For example, when we're going to sleep, your body can't really tell the difference between you falling asleep and dying. So there's lots of times where your body will like jolt you, like you're all of a sudden, and it's like your body's way of like making sure you don't die. But there is also another function where it kind of like makes you want to like toss and turn, because that's like your body's way of like checking to see if you're actually still asleep, because your body's not aware of if your mind is actually asleep or not. It kind of needs to check that before it actually goes through its other processes, which is how you can induce like sleep paralysis, by just having the discipline to remain perfectly still.
I've never heard of that before. That sounds interesting, though.
Yeah, I experimented with lucid dreaming and stuff a while ago and know a little bit about this stuff.
Yeah, I did a little bit of that as well. Had some lucid dreams. That's another thing that's like, if I had the discipline to do that, I think that would make my life a bit better. But at the same
Mm.
time, it's like maybe the juice is not worth the squeeze. I don't know. Um,
Well, you can have lucid dreams without trying to induce them as well, right? And
mm,
if anything, the problem becomes memory, because you forget about, I don't know, like they say 90% of your dream within like, the first 10 minutes of waking. So unless you're like keeping a dream journal and writing down your dream signs and what have you, it's kind of hard to, have like truly lucid experiences. But if you were having the discipline to do all that, it's possible you would notice, oh, hang on a minute, I'm lucid dreaming a lot more than I thought. I'm just not remembering it. I'm able to notice the signs, to become aware enough in my dreams to be lucid long enough to start to nail down these dream signs and actually start to recall the experiences through the use of dream journaling or what have you. But to be honest with you, I'm the opposite. I'm avoiding my dreams. Like one of the reasons why I smoke cannabis is to avoid my dreams. And I kind of have this like subconscious process of when I wake up, I practice and I can do certain things to make sure I avoid remembering the details of the dreams too much, because I have quite intense dreams and they can be disturbing to say the least. And mm, some of them can be quite apocalyptical and negative, and I don't like to be too negatively influenced by my dreams.
yeah, it's weird. Sometimes I have dreams where I did something that's actually quite like um maybe it's something that I wanted to do, or maybe it was something that I shouldn't do in real life, and then I can't remember if I actually did that thing or not. And like I'll kind of double check myself, like, did I actually do that? And then, oh wait, I think that was a dream actually. Later I don't remember that
Mm.
actual dream, but I just remember the event taking place. And like I have to kind of like triple check myself, like, did I do that thing? Did I not do that thing? Sometimes the things are totally innocuous, like, putting out the laundry or something like that. Like I had a dream that I put out the laundry, and then I wake up and I go, oh, I totally put out the laundry like later on in the day. And then I go and check, oh shit, I actually didn't do that. Was that a dream? I think I dreamed that I put that out, and then I get totally confused and um kind of work it out slowly over time, like, oh shit, I think I actually did dream that, and now I need to actually put out the laundry, something like that.
Yeah, I've heard of other people having similar experiences to that. I don't think you're alone in that. I think a lot of people can kind of blur the lines between their dreams and reality, which is also another fascinating subject, because I mean, who's to say that this isn't the dream world and that when we fall asleep, we go back to our real selves in whatever dimension that is?
Yeah, well,
What if this is the lucid dream? And what if we're so convinced by this dream we can't wake up from it?
it's interesting concept. I think that lucid dream means that you can control things, right? Like when I lucid dream, I can control. the way gravity works. I can fly. I can summon people into my dream. I can change things in the dream. I can change the location of the dream. Like I can
Right.
move and teleport and step through mirrors and stuff like that. Things that are um, impossible in the real world. But I don't know if
But
there's
that world's more real than this world.
another dimension somewhere else that you can actually do all of those things. But
Yeah.
I don't imagine I can't imagine what laws would be in place to actually allow for all of that to happen. I don't know. It's an interesting concept. Some sort of like mind what like a mind experiment or like a thought experiment. It's interesting.
Or even just the postulation of what is it we're exactly doing when we're dreaming. We don't fully understand it.
I mean, it's a good like anchor to consciousness, right? Like
I
maybe
think so.
what we need to do if we want to understand consciousness is to understand dreaming first.
I think you're onto something with that. I think that dreaming seems to provide some kind of like factory reset on the brain to allow it to like process things in such a way to maintain its healthy state while operating in the framework of this world. I think that without it, we'd go crazy maybe. And that's the whole point, is that we need that extra anchoring and grounding, because otherwise we would go insane.
Yeah, and it's funny like even animals that apparent like they don't seem to ever sleep have like the ability to put part of their brain to sleep while
Yeah, in
another part of their
stasis or
brain
something.
is awake and like they
Isn't
cycle
did dolphins
between.
do that?
I believe dolphins
They
have like
shut down one side of their brain at a
yeah,
time, or wait, is it whales or dolphins or something like that? Yeah.
something like that. Maybe both. They like have like a half brain sleep, and they cycle
Right.
back and forth to kind of give their brain that like rest time that it needs to. I don't know what it's doing. I don't think anybody understands fully what it's doing. Um, reconfirm
Software
a
updates.
reality. Yeah, software updates. Like it is funny that basically if you don't sleep, if you just stay awake for days and days, eventually you'll become so disconnected with reality, like you can't even tell like what's going on. You're completely
Like,
like discombobulated. Like you're seeing things. You're basically asleep while you're awake, right? You're
yeah,
awake,
like
but things are passing through like a dream state. Um,
I could speak to this if you want. I've had these experiences. I could speak a little bit on this if you'd like me to go into it.
okay, go on.
I've had I've had really bad insomnia in the past, and I've also like had slightly crazy lifestyles of like, happy to game like days and days and days without sleeping.
Hmm.
And I've been through like rough times where, say, I was consuming more weed than usual, and that was having like a compound effect with the lack of sleep and creating some very bizarre experiences. For example, at one point, I think I went almost a whole week without sleeping, and wasn't really eating much either. And like you say about like, it's like you're sleeping while you're awake. It was literally like that, where my entire vision was obscured by like, it was almost like a porthole, a porthole or a portal was like opening up from the center of my vision and taking up like 80% of the vision. I could only see like the periphery of the room behind that. And it was like I was looking at a dream while awake. And it was like I was seeing myself in a car driving while laying down on a sofa. I could see the room around the image of the car driving, but I was seeing both at the same time, if that makes sense,
Ooh,
dreaming while awake.
wow, that's wild. Um,
Yeah.
that sounds like a really interesting movie, actually. That's like
Oh,
one of those like Into the Void movies. Have you ever seen Into the Void?
no.
It's a movie about a guy in Japan who uses DMT and then he gets shot and killed. And it has like a really interesting has very interesting visuals about DMT and really interesting visual about like the sort of afterlife and stuff like that. It's kind of a wild movie. If you haven't seen it, then you definitely gotta check it out. Into the Void. Can't remember
I'll have to
what
check
year
that
it
one out.
is,
Yeah.
but
Well,
Um,
speaking of DMT,
mhm.
dimethyltryptamine, I really want to try that. Like, if
Oh
I
yeah.
could do anything before I die, that's what I want to do before I die.
Well,
Like, after I've done DMT, then it'll be like, I'm gonna be like a Protoss Corsair and be like, it's a good day to die every single day.
I did DMT a few times, and it was pretty mind-boggling. A roommate of mine back in college made it out of
Oh,
he at the time, I think it was like a it was actually legal to import the leaf,
like,
certain leaf
right.
from South America or something like that,
And he
and he
synthesized it out of it.
yeah, he did it. He researched it online. He ordered the plants. The plants arrived. He synthesized it, um, and then made like a huge batch of it. And he,
Lucky.
yeah, he made it. It was pretty crazy, man. It's kind of like what you're talking about. Like a portal opens up, and you just kind of fall into it. And then you're not even you anymore. You're
Right.
just kind of like zooming through the galaxy as just a
Sign
single
me up.
point of consciousness that doesn't have any understanding of what a human being is. Yeah.
This cosmonaut is ready.
Yeah, it's a very intense experience, but really like it's interesting in that movie, the Into the Void movie, that the guy ends up dying, and then has that like outside of body experience after death, um because when I did the DMT trip, I felt like that is what it's like to die. I really had that sense of like this is what death feels like. And
Mm,
then I didn't really feel like you said like, oh, I'm not really afraid of it anymore. Like I see what you can try to explain it to somebody, or explain it to like a young person, like what is it like to die? And like, oh well, you don't know anything, you don't you're just kind of like disconnected from the world. Um
sounds amazing.
you're not you anymore. You're just outside of um your body, you know, um to what it's like to just be a soul. Do you know what I mean? To just
Like
be
going back to the source, or almost.
sort of, yeah. So it's like you can explain that as being, disconnection from the body, but to actually experience it is it's kind of freeing in a way, because it's like, oh well, now I know what it's like. It's not that bad, because to be disconnected from the ego is very scary. But disconnection from the ego is, I think, the best correlation to what death is.
Mm.
And it really is not. It's not as scary as it sounds. And it was.
And I don't think any of our efforts here on Earth can actually get us to that detachment of ego, because I feel like almost detaching your ego is like the biggest ego trip going as well. It's like a bit of a paradox, right? Like the more
Mm,
enlightened you become, the more of an ego you'd probably have as well. So it's almost like a catch 22. It's almost like you have to die to truly get it. But you can, maybe through the use of these substances like methotriptamine or psilocybin, kind of get the idea of what that death is like, and
yeah,
kind of shuffle off that mortal coil temporarily to kind of get some idea of what that is behind the curtain.
yeah. It definitely helps you to alleviate like a bit of a fear of death. That's what it did for me. It made me feel like I had already died, and now I can just live. And that didn't fully sink in right away, but it took shape over time. It only took like, I think, two or three trips to really like uh settle into my consciousness. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, we talk about consciousness a lot this podcast, but when I did DMT, it felt like I got to experience pure consciousness. Like, what is it like to just
Mm.
be conscious without
Yeah,
having
nothing else,
any,
no interference.
yeah, nothing else exactly.
That's kind of what I was trying to get at with you with that conversation I had, or maybe a podcast about the
Mm.
whole getting out of your own way thing. It's almost like trying to attune to that state of consciousness while in that mortal form, like that flow state almost.
Right. Right. Yeah, my biggest like my um, I actually had a lot
I
of
think
time to think about this over
go
the
on.
past week, and I think my big like gripe about what you were saying, or my kind of like pushback about it, was that I feel like what we were talking about. Honestly, I don't think that it's that far off from what I was saying as well. Like we weren't
I
too far
agree.
apart from each other.
I
Like
agree.
what
I do agree with that.
what I was saying was very similar. Like you need to let go of results. Basically, the Stoic principle of like focus purely upon efforts to and let go of trying to get what you're searching for, and just
Right.
focus on being better, and like and just doing what you need to do in order to to better yourself, and then those results will come, and then um
Well, do you remember what my
yeah,
contention with that was?
right, go on, say it again.
All right, so the contention was purely based on the framing because
Hmm.
I was basically trying to say, well, you have to be careful about that because if you come at it too much from the angle of I'm going to better myself by doing this, you have to realize that, well, hang on a minute, I'm not yet that better self, so maybe I don't know quite what's right for me right now. I might do something that I think is good for me that might have a negative effect. Like similar to what you were saying earlier about like, oh, great, the two horses came, but then it broke my leg, and oh, now I don't have to go to war. You never quite know the influence of what these things might have in your life, be
Mm,
it good or bad. And that's kind of the issue. Is like I'm coming at it from the angle of, well, I also feel like you need to let go of letting go. It's almost like having that desire to not desire is still desiring. That's the issue.
mm. Well, what I think my like contention with the sort of like letting go of improving, saying that you can't improve yourself, is that most people, and their struggle is not what I think your pay what you the benefit of this ideology of like letting go of improving, and
Everything.
like getting out of your own way, I think is very beneficial to somebody who is already on their way. Do you know what I mean? Someone
Yeah,
who's
I agree with
who's
you. No, I
working
do
on
agree.
themselves. Like let's say for me, right? Like I am always practicing brood war. Like let me try to get out of my own way by like letting go of trying to improve, something like that, just like enjoying the experience, or just kind of like letting things happen. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, maybe that's a way
Mm.
to improve. That's a way to get better, is to like let go of trying to get better. And then but the thing is, like, if I don't even show up to play, then that's not gonna help me at
But
all. Do you know what I mean?
but you will show up to play. It's just you won't be attached to the idea of the improvement itself. So let's say you say you're a stoic and you're good at letting go of the attachment to the outcome. So okay, you don't win, and maybe that's okay. But the reality is you might feel inside that you didn't improve during that session. So
Mm,
then you might be frustrated because you're not achieving your goal of improvement. Your goal is to improve, right?
mhm.
So you still have that attachment that will still cause suffering. Remember, we talked about in the previous episode about how attachment being the root of all suffering. And now that's the problem, is that you're still hung up on something. You still have the outcome dependence. It's just that you're tricked yourself into not realizing it. So you're still in that
No,
trap. It's just
so
that you got a better framing. You're like halfway there, but not completely.
the what I would say is that the stoic principle of like you wouldn't even be trying to improve, or you wouldn't even be attached to the thought of improving. What you would be is just focusing on my effort. So like, okay, I don't feel like I improved, but that's not inside my control. Improving or not improving is not inside my control. What's inside my control is just, am I working towards that improvement? So I would
But
be able to feel good about, like, yes, I put in those hours. Yes, I did do that study. That like I need to let go of the result
mm,
of
but I'm sure
improving,
you
right?
can. I'm sure you can speak from your own personal experience. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but
Mm,
I'm sure you've had your own frustrations of, say, regressing, where it's like,
mhm.
you derank and you lose your or it seems like you lose your progress, and that causes frustration, right? Because that's like kind of the universe telegraphing to you that you have failed and your fruits, there's no fruits of your labor. And I'm sure that even a Stoic is going to get frustrated with that. The same way a Zen Buddhist is going to get frustrated and angry. Just because he's a Zen Buddhist doesn't mean he doesn't get frustrated and angry.
Well, I'm not a perfect stoic. Perfect stoic wouldn't get frustrated with that because they would
I also
be
think a
happy
perfect
with
stoic
their
wouldn't have
effort.
I also think a perfect stoic wouldn't have any connection to anyone or anything because he doesn't need anyone or anything. He's such a stoic that he doesn't have attachment to anybody and he doesn't need anybody, so he wouldn't have the interactions with anybody.
I don't know what you're saying, but,
I think a true stoic, if you
mhm,
embody the print, like I think there's a bit of a fallacy going on there. I think, like, say, to use Star Wars as an analogy, like say the Jedi, like they might, you could argue that they're fighting for the side of good or what have you, or like peace and whatever in the universe, whatever. Like,
mhm.
but I think that the reality is that they're quite misguided as well, right? Just because they're fighting for what they think is justice doesn't necessarily mean they're going about it the right way. And I think, like, much like Stoicism, it only gets you so far. I think it's a great line of principles, and I think that it's if anything, it's one of the most powerful philosophies you can adopt if you haven't adopted anything yet. And I think if there's anyone out there that's trying to choose between Zen Buddhism and Stoicism, and you've got no experience of either, I'd probably advise them to go with Stoicism first. So I actually kind of agree with you that it's actually a really good framework to follow, and it's also a great stepping stone into like other states of consciousness. And I think it's beneficial for everyone to learn all about it. Is basically what I'm saying. I think it's great. However, I also think that if you go too far down that line, I think there's got to be a threshold, because if you're so detached from everything, then you have no need for experience. And if you have no need for experience, you have no need for learning. And if you have no need for learning, then you're not improved. And I don't know. It's kind of a bit of a paradox. I feel like there needs to be some kind of balance going on there.
I don't understand what you're saying, but, like, that was my gripe with what you were saying was that um, you
I'm not
don't
speaking
need
in
to
terms of
you
disagreement. I'm
need to
speaking in terms of
you need to let
go on.
go of ever improving because 'cause you're not capable of improving yourself. Is like, well, then you're so detached from your own, like, efforts that you're not gonna even try. Do you know what I mean? Like, you just
Well,
let go
but
of
but
trying.
it's not that you don't, it's not that you don't try though. It's not that you seem to be coming from the lens of like you just don't play the game anymore. If anything, I think you would be more likely to do that if you were a true stoic. You wouldn't have the need to play the game because you would be attached to the game or the need to improve at the game. I think if you were embodying that philosophy 100% without any human element in there. But I think since there is still a human element in there and the ego is still in there, that doesn't happen. You still have that attachment to the rate of improvement, what have you. Um, and I guess what I'm trying to say is with the alignment of trying to let go, it's not that you're not playing the game. If anything, you're playing the game more because you're not getting frustrated at the game. So you're able to like open up to the idea of, winning or losing whatever, how many games in a row. Maybe you lose 10 in a row, win 10 in a row, who knows? But you're detached from that outcome, so it enables you to play for longer, if anything. And maybe you'd realize that because you're also not so rigid in how you're practicing. Say you're trying to practice a very specific build or in a very specific way, but it's making you play so rigid that your opponent is abusing you too much and it's creating negative interactions in the game. And because you're so focused on doing a certain thing in a certain way, it's limiting your interactions in the game. So you're not actually improving as a player, because one of the ways you can dominate an opponent in StarCraft is by forcing interactions. And that's how a pro gamer is going to dominate an amateur player. Is he's going to force so many interactions that the other player won't be able to keep up. He won't be able to execute his build order and his strategy while also keeping up with the interactions that the other player is forcing him into. So I feel like as a gamer, you do have to kind of have a sense of flow state and be able to force these interactions and not be too rigid in how you're trying to practice. It's great to have deliberate practice and focus on certain elements of your game, like just focus on the build order or just the macro, but not for too long, because otherwise you're not going to develop all these other skills that are going to be necessary. And if you try and limit yourself too much by, simplifying your learning experience and trying to control everything, you're really going to limit your actual potential growth overall. And by getting out of your own way, you open up all those realms of possibilities, and it's suddenly like, think of all the parallel universes of the potential Saiyan StarCraft player. And in one universe, you're an A rank, in one universe, you're a B rank, in one universe, you're an S rank, but only you cheese. Another universe, you got there on S rank, but you only did macro builds or whatever, what have you. And maybe just by letting go of that control and attachment, you have all those opportunities accessible to you. And maybe in this universe, you can become an A rank that's really good at cheesing, or an A rank that's really good at macro builds, because you got out of your own way to even give yourself the possibility to discover that.
Yeah, I don't see how that's like gonna help me to get to what I want to do. I don't understand. Like,
Okay. Well, in the context of you, if you want me to be less general and speak more just personal to you,
okay,
Satan, I would say analyze your recent not recent, but fairly recent play sessions of your frustrations and when you were like dropping rank or what have you. And look at how, despite your best efforts of like maintaining your stoicism and having all the best intentions and what have you, it still like kind of went down the drain a little bit, and you weren't able to keep your composure to actually gain too much benefit from those sessions. But when you went and take a break and you went and just did your own thing, play some other games, play some RimWorld, do some of this, do some of that, and then come back to the game and having a more relaxed attitude about it, you seem to like maybe discover new ways of learning and having a more open mind to the game and able maybe to absorb information better because you got out of that trap, out of that feedback loop.
Yeah, like just some extra, um, you get like a fatigue for the game for sure.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that's because that fatigue stems from that conscious control, is what I'm trying to say to you. Because if you had less attachment, you would be draining yourself less.
Mm-hmm.
If you if you weren't trying to, if you think of it as like, think of like a fighter jet, like they're so modern now that they're basically like mobile command centers. You could still use it to dogfight, and you could still take the controls and fly it very manually, but for the most part, you could just push buttons and let it do its own thing, right? And that's kind of like what I'm talking about. Like, try and use your body and mind more like a command post rather than like you're a dogfighting pilot trying to micromanage everything. So,
Mm. So I think this has maybe some benefit to someone who's really like trying to become good at something, right? You're like working hard towards becoming great at StarCraft. You're working hard to be good at I don't know, um, accounting or something. I don't know what you're trying to become fantastic at. Maybe, this sort of talk, this sort of like ideology might be helpful to somebody who's really putting in the hours, and they need a rest, they need a break, they need like a burst of inspiration or something like that to push past whatever barrier they've come up against. But to someone who is not doing the things that they need to do to improve their life, like they're not even started yet, I feel like the laissez-faire approach of that sort of Zen Buddhist, like, you cannot improve yourself, so stop trying to improve yourself. Feel like that is like a demotivator that's not going to make you, like, let's say you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel, you're starting to put out videos, or you're thinking of starting a podcast, or you're thinking of going to the gym, working out, or like you're thinking of doing something and you've been thinking about it for a long time because you know that you should do it, or you feel like it would make your life better, but you're just not doing it because you're not motivated to do it. You don't have the discipline to get it done. And then you have this sort of ideology come into your life where it's like, oh, just you're not capable of improving yourself, then I don't think that that's gonna help people to actually get on that path. Do you know what I mean? I feel like the stoic approach,
Maybe
or
not
like
certain people.
the stoic approach of like take control of what is within your control. You know what I mean? Like, let's get moving on the things that are actually within our realm, rather than outside of ourselves, is gonna get more people to begin the path of improvement, better than the ideology of like, oh, you can't improve, you're not able to improve. That's where I was like coming from when I was like, this is a very deep concept what you're talking about, and I see that
Yeah.
you've thought about it a lot. But when I hear what you're saying, I don't feel like that's going to help a lot of people, to get started on what, because most people just haven't even started on what they maybe want to get done. Like, if they're thinking of starting to produce videos or something like that, and they have an idea for it, um, they need something more like concrete. They need something, that's going to help them to get to that start line. You know what I mean? To actually
Well,
get
they do, but
rolling.
they do because they tell them they do. They tell themselves that they need some things, therefore they need it. They're manifesting
Well,
that,
they
right?
need
So the
it. They
whole
need it because
right.
they haven't started.
I agree. I agree. And as I was saying earlier, if anyone hadn't had any pre knowledge of what these ideologies or what these belief structures are, or what have you,
Mhm.
I would recommend Stoicism over Zen Buddhism. And I think that even if you wanted to become a Zen Buddhist, maybe you should use Stoicism as a stepping stone. You know what I mean,
Mm.
as your gateway drug, so to speak. I think yeah, I think it gives you the tools necessary to start to understand things better. I think it's amazing, and I even though I'm a Zen Buddhist, I still practice Stoicism. If that makes
Mm.
sense, I don't poo-poo Stoicism. I think it's amazing.
And we need to yeah, respect those different angles of approaching living. But I really do feel like, um it's important to me that my friends do well, and I want to see them do well. So when you were talking about
Yeah,
it, I was just coming at it from like, I want to see you do well. So I don't like that idea if it's something
but
that's
what if I
gonna
told
give you
you?
an idea to, or give you an excuse to just not
What if I
get
what if I
going.
told you that the opposite was true, and that
Mm,
the only reason I have motivation to even be doing this podcast right now is because of that? Because I tried doing it. Me personally, I did do a stoic angle, and it was successful, but honestly, also gave me more anxieties in certain regards as well. Like, it wasn't a perfect structure for me. For me, obviously, for other people, it might be great.
mm,
But with Zen Buddhism, yeah, it kind of the opposite happens. Like, because I have my sister like call me up and just like trauma dump onto me like the most horrific day she's had sometimes. And like, if like a few years ago, before I was like more embodying this belief structure, I've been studying Zen for a very long time, but I certainly wasn't a very adept practitioner of it until maybe more recently. um I'm not trying to be modest there. I genuinely think that. But in more recent times, I've been able to more embody those beliefs rather than just thinking and believing them. And honestly, it's been able to help me deal with the most traumatic stuff that my father's death, for example, was very sudden and brutal. Yet through Zen Buddhism and Stoicism, was able to like deal with that effortlessly.
mm,
Relatively speaking, obviously it was fucking brutal. I just mean that I thought I would be not able to even function. I thought I'd be like so devastated that I can't even think straight. But the reverse was true. I felt like more competent than I'd ever been in my life. And in fact, something John Pearson said actually resonated with me in those moments. I thought back to something he had said, and he said, one thing you can like aim to achieve in life is to be the strongest person at your parents' funeral.
mm,
And I was that, and I stood up and I gave a speech, and I even made like people laugh at my dad's funeral,
mm,
and like I wanted to lift the spirits of people there. And I felt like I wouldn't be able to do that without Stoicism or Zen Buddhism, and I
mm.
can only speak from personal experience.
Right, right. We were talking about a little bit about that. Like, I remember last time we talked about how you were in a taxi leaving the hospital, and
Yeah.
talked about how you kind of said like sort of like a mistruth. You just said to the
Hmm.
guy like, my dad's fine or whatever, and you were asking me about like, you know, about telling the truth in that moment.
Right.
And I gave kind of a response, but um, I thought about it a lot more afterwards, and I was thinking about it like, um, it is kind of like I don't want to uh, say anything mean to you, but I feel like it's kind of a self-serving lie, right? Just like most lies are self-serving, is that you didn't want an awkward interaction
Oh,
and
I'm
a
comfortable with the
line.
awkward
Mm,
interaction. The thing was that he seemed like a very how to put it. He seemed very surface level in how he was interfacing with the world, and he didn't seem like he would want to go into anything too deep.
mm,
Yet, and I didn't offer the information. Oh, my dad's fine. It's just that he offered it in like a, oh well, I hope he gets better kind of thing, and I was just like going along with that, being like, yeah, me too, kind of thing. Like, I didn't
mm,
want to. I felt like in that moment I could handle the awkwardness. I could handle the emotion of dealing with my dad dying better than he could handle the awkwardness of not knowing what to say when someone says, "Oh, by the way, my dad's dying." Actually, like yeah, I don't want to ruin his day, man. I'll make him feel bad or something.
mm,
In a way, it was me just wanting to. I felt like I could be strong for both of us in that situation, that's what I was doing. I was coming from a place of strength. I was inside still vulnerable because I'm going through the process of dealing with my dad's death and what have you. But at the same time, I felt like I was more resilient than I'd ever been before, and I felt like I had this almost like awakening inside myself. And I was like, "Hang on a minute, I don't need to obsess and be so anxious about anything anymore. I can just deal with it in the moment and
right.
like handle each moment as they come, and like only worry about the now."
So you don't think that he might have had somebody who died as well? Like maybe he would have, if you
Well, I was
told
getting,
him that
I was getting out.
uh, maybe
I was in the
he would
pro.
have had a story for you, like,
Right.
well, my wife just died, 6 months ago, and you guys could maybe talk about that a little bit, and that would have helped you in that
You're right.
situation. Maybe you would have had a really great interaction with that guy, like something that would have helped
I
you.
agree.
Hmm.
I agree. There's possible something I maybe robbed him, or at the very least, I could have robbed him of having a connection and maybe a
Hmm.
good interaction that maybe he needed. That's the way you probably want to attack me with. Say, hang on a minute, Jean. He could have had like someone that died, and he hasn't been able to like find someone else that's going through the same thing right now. For all I know, maybe his mum died of pancreatic cancer as well, and he'd find it cathartic to find someone to relate to. You're absolutely right.
Hmm.
Um, you're absolutely right. That is a possibility. But in the moment, in my authentic self, he had just pulled up, and I was in the process of getting out of the car when he said it, and it was
Mm,
like I didn't want to make it super awkward for him as I was getting out of the car, kind of thing. It was like a yeah. If I wasn't in the process of getting out of the car, maybe it'd been different. But in that moment, it just felt right to do that.
yeah, and you could also have just said, thank you. You don't have to.
Yeah.
There's really no reason to lie. I think in most circumstances, especially with a stranger, like I told you before, my only reasons to ever lie is to keep someone's secret and um to not go to jail, or I have to lie to the police.
Yeah.
So like there are some circumstances to lie, but I feel like every interaction is better and more authentic if you choose not to lie. But that was just something that I thought about after that conversation, and yeah, I thought I'd bring it up again. But um, it is tough. It is tough to, in every situation, to just say the truth, even if it seems like kind of like a w- very passing moment. You know what I mean? That doesn't really
Mm.
matter. Someone who will never, maybe you'll never see them again, or you'll never have the interaction with them again. And
Right.
just to like smooth over a conversation or to smooth out an interaction with just a quick um, an easy lie that just doesn't have any effect on the real world, doesn't have any effect on them at all. But I feel
Yeah.
like every time you do those type of things, it kind of like primes your brain to pull a lie. You know what I mean? When you have any sort of situation, you know what I mean? Whereas if you're
Right.
constantly always just saying the truth or, avoiding lying, at least like never lying. That's what Jordan Peterson says, right? Like, tell the truth or at least don't lie. It's like,
To
um,
the best of your knowledge, yeah.
yeah. So like, uh, you don't have to tell the truth all the time, but you can avoid telling the truth, but not by telling a lie. Do you know what I mean?
But I don't know if I agree fully with that because I also
Mm,
think that omission of truth is also lying in different packaging. Like, for
mm,
example, if you don't tell your spouse you cheated on them, that's an omission of truth, and you're still lying by not telling them, right?
mm. Yeah, that's a difficult situation. Like, right? How did you get away with lying or with cheating? Right? Did you lie to them, tell them that you were going on a business trip when you were actually, going to meet up with a woman? Like, how did you just how did you get away with cheating on someone without ever lying to them? You know what I mean? It's pretty tough. Um, and
But
just
yeah, I think
mm,
but I think even if you don't tell a lot, even if you somehow are god at like loopholes and you figure out a
mm,
way of skirting around that, I think you're still lying because you're omitting the truth. Still, that's still a
mm,
form of lying. I
sure,
think it's just semantics. Like
sure.
that's just a liar's way of justifying it to themselves.
It's very hard to pull off something like that. But yeah, um, eventually you're gonna have to lie if you're going around behind your partner's back. Um, that would
Especially
be
if
a
it's something
very
you're actively doing.
specific situation, huh?
If it's something you're actively doing, especially, like, it's one thing to like do it one time and never do it again, and like
Mm,
don't tell them that one truth, but to actively live the false truth and
mm-hmm.
omit the real truth, that's like deep lying.
Yeah, for
You're
sure.
literally living a lie.
Right. But for example, you know, um, someone asks you like, "How are you doing today?" and you're actually just completely destroyed. But you don't want to have that conversation with them.
But what if?
Do you
But what if?
say,
What about?
you could tell them like, I'm I'm not doing so well, but change the subject. You know what I mean? Like, what if you just change the
Mhm.
subject? Like, you just go, all is clear on the Western Front or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, things are going well at work, something like that. You know what I mean? You just don't
Mhm.
tell them that um, you are, falling apart. You know, but if you tell them directly, "I'm doing great. How are you?" That's a lie that is, I would say, negatively going to impact you in the future. Do you know what I mean? That's like that telling people that you're doing great when you're actually falling apart is uh it's like priming your own mind for future lies, and it's also it's it's really bad for your mental health. I think that's one thing that people do a lot that I think is
Mhm.
really, really bad for your mental health is going around when things are falling apart, telling everyone that everything's fine, because
Yeah.
you're lying to yourself while you're lying to everyone else, and then you don't really know when everything is fine, when everything's great. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
when things are actually great, you're still acting the same way as when things were falling apart. So your body gets confused. I feel like your mind gets confused
It's
as to
almost like
where
you're
you're actually
forcing
at.
yourself into a state of cognitive dissonance, which is
Right.
usually like ushered in from like a toxic relationship, except the toxic relationship is with yourself.
Cognitive dissonance is a good way to put it. Like, you have a weird cognitive dissonance in how you're actually feeling, how you're actually doing. Um,
You're literally invalidating yourself. You're literally gaslighting yourself and validating your own emotion. You're literally
yeah,
basically being an abuser to yourself. Like the same thing, like say a toxic boyfriend or girlfriend would do to you, but you're doing that to yourself. Like it's really bad.
yeah. So like, um, if you're in that situation, someone asks you, "Are you okay? Are you doing okay?" And you just tell them like, "No, I'm not doing all right, but I don't really want to talk about it." Like, okay,
I'll tell them
that's
exactly.
fine, you know?
Me personally, I
Mm,
tell them more or less what's going on, but I wouldn't trauma dump onto someone
mm,
like right away. I'd kind of like give them a vibe of what it is, and then see if kind of gauge their reaction of like, do they actually want me to get into this or not?
mm.
And
It's
sometimes that'll be through the form of them telling me some trauma as well. If they're willing to share their trauma, maybe they're much more likely to hear mine. You know what I mean? Or at least be willing to talk on that level.
right, but thinking of the situation where you don't want to talk to that person. You know what I mean? You don't want to give them that
Well,
information. You just
well,
want
here's the
to
thing.
move on
Everyone's
from that conversation. Like you want to keep
uh,
going forward because you're not ready to talk about that. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to talk about that with that person. So you would just lie, just say like, "No, I'm doing fine." But that's not good for your mental state. Just say like, "No, I don't want to, I'm not doing well, but I'm sorry, I don't want to talk about it." And just move on. And like that person has to accept that they can't force you to say anything about it, but at least they know that you're not doing well, and maybe they can give you like a little bit of a wider berth. You know what I mean? They can give you a little bit more of a some more space or whatever, and you can also be truthful with yourself. Do you know what I mean?
right.
You can maintain that truth internally and externally.
I think that would definitely be beneficial in a lot of dynamics. It also could have a detrimental effect. Like, say you're dealing with someone that has rejection sensitivity, they might see that as you rejecting them if you
Mm,
do say something like that.
right.
Especially if you're not very careful with your tone of voice when you say it. Some people, I'm not trying to say people are like snowflakes. I'm saying literally they've got like mental illnesses, which makes them more sensitive to these things, and they might, misunderstand your intention and think that you're in a way rejecting them and don't want to share with them specifically.
Right. Well, you can't walk on eggshells all the time, like hoping that
No,
they're not going to, blow up on you or something. You have to live your own authentic truth, right?
definitely, definitely.
And maybe you can be a little bit softer with your tone or your language and how you do it. But I think the key still remains is the lot, like not lying in for convenience sake is really important to keeping your own mental count on what is true and what's not.
Well, I feel like we talked about this on a previous episode about how the lies we tell are like the most damaging, and I think I even brought
We
up
tell
about how
ourselves, yeah.
yeah, and I think that we are, but like you say, we're painting over rotten wood if we don't be honest with ourselves, and that blinds you to the rotten wood beneath, and that will come crashing down eventually if you remain blind to it. And I think there will be many more issues going forward in society because it seems like there is some kind of mental health epidemic going on right now.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think it comes back around to the whole like thing we were talking about with diet, right? Deficiencies
Right.
in your nutrition, I think, causes a lot of mental health issues, and deficiencies in your mother's nutrition during your gestation as well, I think causes a lot of health issues. There's so many factors that are happening that are going on with health and with your maturation, like as a fetus. There's
Right.
it's really hard for us to pin down anything. It's like another thing that we don't understand consciousness, but we really don't understand health as of like for the full thing. Do you know what I mean? Like everything together. Uh, every single day, there's so many new studies and information coming out about health. That's just
Well, it's
kind
why
of
doctors
opening
are
our
so
eyes. Yeah.
specialized because it's kind of hard to know everything about how everything works. There's just so
Hmm.
much to learn, and as science progresses, it's like the like two-thirds of what you learn a few years ago is going to become irrelevant and thrown out the window because it's going to be wrong or something. You know.
So understanding our own bodies is very new science, very like progressively like what would you say, like it's cutting edge science, you know what I mean? Um but
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
are definitely things that uh are clear is that eating foods that deplete your nutrients is going to be bad for you in the long run, whether that's for all kinds of illnesses or disorders, mental or you know, organ failures, those type of things, heart failures, the amount of
Yeah.
heart disease that we're seeing now, I think a lot of that can be attributed to these products, these processed products that are shoved into every single thing, processed sugars and vegetable oils.
There's no escaping it because even if you're a vegan, you're probably eating some of the most processed food available to you out there. So there's a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people out there thinking that they're doing all right and they're vegans and they're going about their day and then they're doing some good in the world and they're doing their body some good, but they might be eating some ultra processed foods that are going to really be messing them up as well.
Yeah. The my wife worked in a vegan restaurant when she was in Nagoya for like a year or something like that. And she was saying like some of the most disgusting food stuff she's ever seen was in that vegan restaurant. Like the way that they were processing certain things, and the way they were making foods in the vegan restaurant was repulsive to her. Like it really put her off of veganism because she was a vegan for several years,
Right.
but she ended up turning off of it because of what she saw, like the processes that they were using to make the foods was really repulsive to her to where she won't even eat vegan food anymore. She's like, "No, I'm not interested in vegan food at all." So,
Right.
um, yeah, that's definitely true, I think, and just eating like very clean food that your ancestors would have eaten, um, meats, potatoes, vegetables, but use butter, use olive oil, oils that are natural. Like for example, an olive, all you have to do is squeeze it, and you get olive oil. Right? It's not like there's a chemical process to get olive oil out of olives. It's very simple. These other seed oils like canola oil, they're not just crushing it to get the oil. You know what I mean? Like there's a huge list of processes that needs to be done to
Right.
get oil out of that seed. So all of these seed oils are very, very highly processed, and we know that
I,
processed food is rough for you, but it's just used in every vegan food. There's so many, yeah, so
I
many
think you should be
seed oils.
careful about where you purchase your oil as well, because I
Mm,
think there's some deceptive marketing going on where, say, it could be olive oil mixed with another oil and being
mm,
marketed as olive oil because there's only a threshold they need to meet depending on what the labels are actually saying. So you kind of probably want to actually look on the back of those bottles and do a little bit of investigation before you purchase as well.
right. Just use butter, and beef tallow, or lard is fine. Those are natural fats that are readily available. You can get them very cheap. The only reason that vegetable oil became so popular, I think, is because it's even cheaper than those oils, but you don't really need a lot um, to cook with butter or beef tallow. You just put a small
We
amount in, and you can
we
cook.
But you could also add a tiny bit of oil to the butter just to help it stop burning as well. Would be another little trick you could do. So using a tiny bit of oil and a little bit of butter, and you're also stopping the butter from reaching a burning threshold as well.
Am I wrong about this? I think that butter has a higher smoke point than olive oil, but I'm not sure.
I've heard. I don't know for sure. I don't know,
I
but
think
I'm
butter
pretty
has a
sure
very
that.
high smoke point, but I'm not 100% on
No,
that.
I think it's the other way around. I think by adding the oil to the butter, you prevent it reaching that smoke point. At least that's what I've heard chefs say. How right that is, who knows? Sain's like
Googling
dashing his fingers across the keyboard like a spider right now, trying to
it.
investigate the smoke point of butter and oil. We need a Jamie in the studio, someone to look this shit up, so we can go, hey, look that shit up.
Yeah, olive oil is 200 degrees and butter is 150. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a little dash of oil with your butter to stop it from burning. It's a good little chef tip for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I do that when I'm cooking my steaks because I want to be able to baste the steaks with the butter still, but I also don't want to burn the shit out of the steak and the butter.
Mm. Do you take multivitamin at all?
I mean, I do, but not for the purposes of the multivitamin because it doesn't really your body can only absorb so much. You know what I mean? But I take it for the fact the omega 3. It's like an omega 3, and it has a multivitamin with the omega 3. But I'm mainly
Mm.
taking it for like the fish oil and omega 3, and it just happens to have some other multivitamins. I also take a vitamin D supplement as well, just for
Mm.
days that I'm not getting out as much.
Right. Do you know that redhead people make their own vitamin D?
Well, maybe on the stat sheets they like unticked soul and like added in the vitamin D immunity. You know?
Yeah, attributes.
Yeah, they redistributed their attributes a little bit there.
Yeah. I do take a multivitamin, but I'm not totally sold on whether it's actually helping or not.
Nah, I mean, maybe there's some benefit, but I doubt my body's absorbing much of it. Maybe a little bit. I doubt it's doing as much for me as much as they're trying to market it to me as. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm probably just buying expensive urine at the end of the day, but there's some omega 3 in there as well. So you know what I mean. I'm getting a little bit out of it.
Mhm. Right. You could just eat fish. Eating fish is good too.
I could just eat fish. You're right. I've had so much fish and chips in my day that I'm a little bit put off fish. There are times I do like fish, but it's not something I could eat regularly.
I see. Yeah. It's
I'm much more likely to order an Indian than get fish and chips. You know what I'm saying?
right. It's really common in Japan to eat a lot of fish, so I've been eating a ton.
You got access to good fish for a start,
Mhm. A lot of fish. But I think that
and you got
there
to know how to prepare it properly.
like Japan historically has had like really high uh, longevity. You know, people live a lot longer here than in a lot of places in the West,
Mm,
and I don't know. I think that that might be slowly reversing. Like the issuance or the amount of cancer is getting really crazy in Japan, and I think it might have to do with plastic, like how much plastic is being used. Because I see it
yeah,
everywhere. Like if there's plastic,
individually wrapped stuff within
everything's
wrapping room
individually
wrappings.
wrapped. Yeah, everything's covered in plastic, and it's really really common here to have like they have very nice meals in the convenience stores. You can just go in and get a little meal, and they will like you take it out of the fridge. It's in plastic, and then they throw it in the microwave and microwave the shit out of it, and then give it to you. So, like one thing that's been brought up a lot recently is that microwaving your food in plastic, has like a really detrimental effect. Like the plastic like leaches chemicals into
Mm.
your food, and I see it all the time. Like everyone's doing it here in Japan. It's really really common. Just wondering how much of an effect it's having.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to say the exact impact, but I know for sure that we're not probably meant to have microplastics in our system. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, and things like PFAS and stuff like that, the forever chemicals that are being used all the time. There's yeah, there's a lot to worry about in terms of like that's one thing. It's like okay, you can worry about the environment a lot, but actually worrying about what goes into your body is probably more beneficial to you. It's like we're
Mm.
thinking about the things that you can control, but then at the same time, if everybody's worrying about the things that are going into their body, then the world will change. Do you know what I mean? So like there's like this idea of like I need to go out and or I need to get on Twitter and like get really mad about certain things so that the world will change. Well, actually, you need to like if you just act in a way that's going to benefit you. You know, if you're actually just focused on the things that you can control, you're actually sort of controlling the things outside of yourself as well in a small way. Do you know what I mean? Rather than like trying to control things outside of you, in a big
Yeah.
way, and then not controlling the things that are actually like you're actually getting nothing done if you're trying to control those big
Right.
issues, right? But if you're
It goes back.
controlling at a small level, then you're actually having a small effect. You know what I mean?
It goes back to the previous episode of the homelessness situation what I talked about with
Mm,
the people should be focusing on a more local level. Like instead of going on X and typing about how homelessness is so bad and blah 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 blah. And you're not really
mhm.
doing anything about the problem. Why don't you go down to the local homeless shelter and actually do something about it? You know what I mean? Like actually doing something you can have an impact on. If your goal is to actually have an impact and make a change, then why not do something on a more local level? If you do want to have a sense of control, if that's what you're really seeking is a sense of control over that situation, rather than
Right.
focusing on the macro lens, focus on the more micro local lens.
Right. And if you're really upset about the food system and like animals being treated badly,
But they're not
why
saying.
don't huh?
They're not. They're virtue signaling, or at least the vast majority of people are virtue signaling. They don't
Right.
actually want to affect these issues. They just want to be seen to. It's all like a social status thing. They've got anything else going on in their lives. So it's like,
Sure.
oh well, I can maybe get involved in this and have some kind of attention drawn from this and seem more interesting because I can talk about this.
So if you're actually really upset about the food system, you're actually upset about animal cruelty, like
Go do something
starting
about
your
it.
starting your own garden, doing like hydroponics or doing some sort of like home gardening and feeding yourself that way will actually that will have more of an effect than your like outrage will ever have, right? Because if you're doing
Yeah.
that and people pick up on like maybe other people start to notice what you're doing and maybe they start to do it too, or even just you yourself doing it, you're
Be the change.
removing you're removing one more source of income for the for the system, you know what I mean? And the system has to adapt um, in order to survive. But it doesn't have to adapt if you don't change, right? If you don't change, then it can't, it
Yeah.
won't change, right?
You have to be the change you want to see, guys. As simple as that. Stop harping on about it. Stop whining. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger says, stop whining.
Yes.
Actually get out there and do something about it, for God's sake. Go study some stoicism, learn how to take some actual control of your life,
And don't
rather than just sitting there talking about it.
don't do something like go out and have like a 1 day of protest or like rioting or something like that. That's not helping anything. Focus on your own life, what you can do to
Yeah.
change your own life that
Especially
will
if you're
benefit
taking
you.
pictures of you, especially if you're taking pictures of yourself at the protest to show people that you went to a protest. Like, what are you doing here? Like, what's your intention behind this?
Right. This is It's a new world. It's a new world, full of a lot of idiots. We've gotta slug on and just take care of ourselves and try to be the change that we want to see. Try to act locally about what we feel should
That's
be
kind of what we're
different.
doing now with the podcast, right?
Yeah.
We're acting locally within our community, our tribe, so to speak, and we've
Hmm.
got our own individuality within that tribe. That's what Jordan Peterson says, right? He says, like, you find a tribe to be a part of, and you find your own individual identity once you've established yourself within that tribe. We've already
Mm.
done that. We're old enough to have already done that. But now it's like, well, maybe we can spread a little bit of not wisdom, but a little bit of interesting topics within those communities to actually get people thinking and talking on a more local level, and maybe that will have a more outward reach effect and it trickles down through like the hierarchies of society, so to speak.
Okay. Let's. Can I change the topic here for a second? Because I actually want to
No.
discuss
Yeah,
one
of course
thing.
you can.
Um, that just has been like rattling in my brain for quite a long time.
Sure,
Which
buddy.
is
What is it?
actually one thing that Jordan Peterson said, and he was talking about like how uh, when you're gonna climb a mountain, you should see if it's actually the mountain that you want to climb first. Like if you're gonna take on an endeavor, if you're gonna try
Yeah.
to become something or get somewhere, you should actually look at that thing before where that actually is before you start that endeavor, because you can get like really wrapped up in the journey and really wrapped up in like the efforts put in to get to that place, and then you end up at the top and you're like, oh, actually, like once you're at the top of the mountain, then you can see another mountain over in the distance, like actually I wanted to be over there, I don't want to be here. You know what I mean? Whereas when you're climbing the mountain, you can't see the peaks. You
And
know
then
what I mean?
then you gotta go down the mountain to even begin.
To
You
go
don't, you
up,
can't even
yeah.
just start climbing the next mountain. It's like learning bad habits in
Yeah.
StarCraft or something. It's like you finally see where you gotta be, but you still gotta unlearn all those bad behaviors first before you can even start to actually improve, right?
Yeah. So it's like if you're gunning to be the CEO of a company or whatever, you should like go and see what that CEO's life is like, you know? What kind of hours are they working? You know, what kind of situation is their life in, you know, their relationships, their struggles, right? And like get to know because if that's what you're aiming for,
And
it
not just on
might
the surface
seem
level.
impossible. It might seem impossible to get there, right? It might feel like you may never get there, but you might actually get there and you might actually arrive and realize that what you've been working for so long and hard is actually not even worth what you put in, right? So, and it's not even
Mm.
where you want to be. Um, so that's something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I'm doing this like YouTube thing and like looking at other people who are doing it as well and going like, is this a mountain I really want to climb? I think so, but like um where am I going to be at the top if I get to the top, if I work really hard, if I actually get success, am I going to be where I actually want to be? Do you know what I mean? I don't think
Where
people
do you
think
wanna be
about that as
soon?
I don't think people think about that very much.
Where do you wanna be soon?
Well, I mean, I have an idea. I have a direction. I want to be independent
The
completely.
very best, like no one ever was?
I want to be able to travel wherever I want and work from wherever I want, and have enough money to just sustain myself, and to have enough so that I can potentially have a family in the future if I want one. I haven't decided yet if I want kids, but like I don't want it to be like, oh, I can't afford it. You know what I mean? I'd love to. I'd
Right.
like to have the ability
But you
to
wanna
do
do
that.
but you wanna do that through very specific means. You wanna do it
Yeah.
facilitated by the things you enjoy.
Exactly, exactly. So that's my goal. And there are a lot of examples out there of people who have done it through making content on YouTube and on other platforms, that type of thing. Like one person who really comes to mind is like an Artosis or a Tasteless or something like that. Someone who
Mm.
has been doing casting and everything for so long, and they've reached that level of success and they have the ability to do those things, right? And it's interesting to look at them and go like, is that where I would like to be? Is that if I actually got to that level, would I be happy? You know what I
Mm.
mean? They seem relatively happy. They seem pretty happy, but I just
But do you know what'd be amazing, Zane?
yeah.
Do you know what I want? Do you know what I
Mm,
want, Zane?
yeah,
Do you care?
go ahead. Let me know.
What I want is in about a year's time,
Mm.
when maybe our podcast is slightly more interesting and slightly more viewed, I'd love to have Tasteless and Artosis on the podcast and do a deep dive on them and do like an interview, like a double date, you and me interviewing both of them. And maybe they can flip the roles on us as well and ask us questions, or like, flip the script on us a little bit too if they want to shoot back a little bit and not have the spotlight on them too much. You know what I mean? But I would love to do a deep dive with them if possible in the future, where we like interview both of them and go into their character and as casters and their experiences and who they are as people and what have you.
So is that the peak of the mountain, or is that a step along the path to the
No,
peak?
that's just that's like the first peak of the mountain. Then you realize the mountain keeps on going,
Okay.
and you're like Sisyphus, learning to enjoy the process and only enjoy the process. And it's okay to keep pushing that boulder up there, up the mountain, because that's what you want to do.
Mm, yeah. It's an interesting concept. It's just something that I've been thinking about a lot. Like what does the peak of the mountain look like in my chosen endeavor? You know what I mean? Like what does it look like from up there? I'm just curious. I'm wondering what it must be like, and wondering whether that's gonna make me feel um fulfilled or happy when I get to that peak. Is that gonna be the place where I'm like, oh, I wish I would have climbed a different mountain, or am I just gonna be
Mm.
happy being at the top? Even if I ever get to the top, of course, I could die tomorrow. I could, fail and fall off and not make it. But if I do keep pushing, and I intend to keep pushing, and I do eventually reach the top, like what does it look like up there? Is that where I want to
Well,
go, or should I change paths now so that I don't climb a mountain that I'm not interested in? You know what I mean? It's very a very deep thought process. I don't think a lot of people think about it, and I think a lot of people just show up to work really hard, and never think about like, well, maybe 10 years down the line, I'll be at this spot, where I'm actually at the top of the mountain, and like wonder, was this the
well,
right mountain to climb?
I think the biggest tragedy in all of this is actually something a little bit different. I think the real tragedy is that they're never living in the moment. They're always living with the future in mind. They're living
Mm,
in the now for the future, and they're losing the now. And then when they finally get to their destination, they've lost all that now, and now they're in the new now, and they're like, well, now what? It's
mm,
like, well, this is it. This is now. They're like, what? Is this it? This is what I've been working towards? Yes, this is now. You've been ignoring it the entire time. You've
mm.
been like not enjoying the process the entire time. You've been too obsessing over the future that
Right.
you weren't able to live in the now.
Yeah, there's like a balance between thinking about the future and being in the now, right? Like you want to aim yourself at the right mountaintop, so you have to think about the future, but you also have to enjoy the process of the hike, right?
And yeah, the actual walking of the actual journey itself, each
Yeah.
step along that journey, and if anything, by focusing on that journey, by focusing on your feet kissing the snow of that mountain side as you climb up it, that also allows you to be more present and have that attention focused away from potential negative thoughts of like it being insurmountable. Like, how the fuck am I going to climb all the way to You're just
Mhm.
focusing on your feet and what's in front of you and what you're dealing with in the infinite now. And that makes it also easier to absorb the challenges as they come because you're not obsessing over all these potential pitfalls along the way.
And I think that will make you more successful if you're just paying attention to the now. If you're really like focused on what you're doing every single
Mm.
day and like in it, living it, being present will help you to succeed in whatever you're doing.
It's certainly helping me talk
Focusing on
to
the
you during this podcast.
Mm. Focusing on the future will ultimately, like, if you're constantly obsessing over it, it'll harm your present performance and limit your ability to progress towards your goal. I definitely agree with that.
I just noticed something saying this is our third episode, right? And three is the magic number. As the Beatles said. Three is the magic number. Something
Possibly.
special about the number three.
And it's been 3 hours, man. I think we should wrap
Oh,
this up.
no, wrap it up with a nice little neat bow and deliver it to someone.
Someone out there will probably watch it, maybe, right?
Probably, maybe, kind of, not really.
Kind
Who
of a
knows?
little bit. Well,
Sort of, maybe. But it's okay. Even if one person watches it, maybe that's worth it, huh?
hmm, it was a fun conversation. Either way,
It's a good excuse for us to talk. Yeah, I'm happy about that alone.
I think we reached a deeper understanding as well
Yeah,
of
man.
each other and
I feel
our.
closer to you already.
Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been a fun conversation. Doom Drop episode 3. We'll see you next week for episode 4. And let us know your thoughts in the comments. Let us know other ideas or topics you might want discussed. This has been Shun and Saiyan. We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.